Coming up on UGTV, Board of Commission meeting of the Unified Government of Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas.
Ms. Parker will read the opening statement and we'll get started.
We would like to welcome all present to the meeting of the Board of Zoning Appeals. Mr. Jeff Carson is serving as chairman this evening. The format for this meeting is as follows. As each application is called, we would ask that all those, both for and against, to please come to the front of the room. The applicant will make the opening statement explaining the proposal. Please note that the applicant will be given 15 minutes to present their case. The 15 minutes includes the applicant and any consultants and other members of the applicant's team. Members of the board will then address any questions they may have to the applicant. Any persons wishing to speak in favor will be allowed to do so at that time. Then those persons in opposition will be allowed to make their statements and ask questions. Please note that each member of the public who wishes to speak, either for or against the application, will be given 5 minutes to express their opinions. Time may not be shared between speakers. A speaker at the podium may request to extend their time, and the board may, by 2/3 majority vote, extend any speaker's time in 5-minute increments. The applicant will then answer questions and make a closing statement. All statements at the meeting shall be directed to the board, and cross-conversation among those in attendance is prohibited. Questions between opposing parties shall be directed first to the chairman, who may then ask the proper person to answer, such answer being directed to the board. The public hearing portion of the meeting will then be closed, and the public will only be allowed to address the board if a question is directed to them. The staff will then make their comments and recommendation. The board will discuss the application and make their decision. A brief statement of the reason for the motion will precede the making of the motion. Motions to approve shall include the staff stipulations unless otherwise stated in the motion. Also, all items or exhibits submitted and/or shown either to the board or staff during the hearing will be retained and become part of the official record of these proceedings. The board is required to disclose contacts with regard to any item on the agenda. Before each item, I will ask if any contacts have been made, and members of the board will be asked to disclose those contacts at that time. We ask that anyone with a cell phone to please turn them off or switch to non-audio so you will not disturb the meeting. Our first item on the agenda tonight is appeal number 2334, Christopher Finger with UG Public Works for property at 13701 Leavenworth Road. Does any member of the board have any contact to disclose with regard to this application?
No.
All those for and against, please come to the front of the room.
Good evening. Go ahead and give us your name and address and tell us about your project.
My name is Chris Finger. I'm with Water Pollution Control Public Works. I'm just here to present the project. This is a regional sewer improvement project is what we're doing here. And so the site we're looking for the variances on is where our pump station's located. We've purchased this property from the property owner in the southeast corner of that lot shown in the purpose of utilizing it for a pump station and effluent flow holding basin in the future when flows get to the point where we need that. And we've also purchased easements up the east property line to put the force main and an access road in so that we have access to the lot, so it's not landlocked. I guess that's the basic gist of what our project is. It's just a regional sewer improvements project to open up this whole sewer drainage basin for development in the future.
Okay. What's the estimated completion time for this project?
We are working to be done by early to mid-July.
Okay. Are there any road improvements planned for Leavenworth Road?
Public Works is working on some. They should be putting them out. To not speak too much about it because I don't know too much. There's some planned widening in front of the school as well as some improvements, I believe, to 131st and Leavenworth
Okay.
for some turning improvements.
Okay. Any questions for the petitioner? Okay, seeing none, we'll open up to public. Is there anybody who wants to speak in favor of or in opposition to this project? Seeing none, we'll close the public portion and we'll get staff comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Board of Zoning Appeals. There's a lot of variances requested on this that can all be taken in one vote, but when you take a little bit, piece of property for a public works project, it necessitates a whole bunch of variances. I think in the new code we'll fix that for a city project like that where, there's really no way around that. But we do want to follow our own code, so that's why we brought this forward, and we'd recommend approval.
Any questions for staff? Seeing none, I'll stand for a motion.
Motion to approve, staff.
Second.
Motion approved by Commissioner Connolly, seconded by Commissioner Reasons. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Cho?
Aye.
Conley?
Aye.
Ernst?
Aye.
Huey?
Aye.
Jones?
Aye.
Reasons?
Aye.
Serta.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to approve this appeal, subject to the staff's comments and suggestions, passes 7 in favor and none opposed.
Thank you.
Our next appeal is number 2356, Fred Del Toro, for property at 3447 North 31st Terrace. Does any member of the board have any contact to disclose with regard to this application?
No.
Mr. Chairman, I would note for the record that this application was heard at the December 9th, 2019 Board of Zoning Appeals meeting, and that testimony is part of the record this evening.
Thank you.
All those for and against, please come to the front of the room.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Go ahead and give us your name and address and tell us about your project.
Fred Del Toro. The address is 3447 North 31st Street. What I'm trying to do is build a stable in there, 10 by 10 foot, and then an accessory or attached, kind of like a 5 by 4 foot area to store horse feed for a horse that's going to be located in that area.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions for the petitioner? Okay, seeing none, we'll open up the public portion of the meeting. Is there anyone who wants to speak in favor of or in opposition to this request? Yes, sir. Go ahead and give us your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Marvin Robinson. My address 713 Lafayette Avenue. My main project is the Quindale Ruins Underground Exercise 2020. I've been working on that project since 1987. We're the Virgin National Historic Landmark. We're blessed to get the National Commemorative Site. I hadn't understood why the tubs were facing the road going to the cemetery. Then the chicken coops that are already there. I couldn't understand with the evaluation of the National Historic Landmark why the creek that ran real low at the base to the ground with clear water is the vertical pool. And then when they came and messed up the cemetery, when they were doing the pipeline repairs, of which I understand the pipeline company has easement right away. But what I tried to explain to the people from Phillips 66 that said they wanted to work with the community is that I know I can't speak for anybody. I can't speak for how the Euro-American thinks, the Latino, Hispanic people think. I can't even speak on behalf of how black people think. But the proof is, when someone dies, that doesn't stop people from loving them. And they were resting in peace until they came up there and messed up the cemetery. And exiting, that's when I noticed the sign for the meeting on the...
Sir, I need you to limit your comments to Mr. Del Toro's case. I can't help you with Phillips 66 and the easement issues. We're only here to talk about Mr. Del Toro's case. So if you could keep your comments relative to what he wants to do with his stable, that would speed things along, and we're staying on track.
Okay. So-
I do appreciate your concerns with the other issues. They're just not
Okay.
pertinent to us here tonight.
Okay. Well, the CFR, 6 CFR statute 65.4, National Historic Landmark Criteria, says that we need to take into consideration the surrounding area and the environment before any projects are done. And I thought this was going to be more diplomatically handled based on the site being the largest archaeological underground railroad site in North America, that the person that wants to put this new construction would have the humanity to yield and go find another space to go do this new construction that would take away from the ambiance and the sacred space setting that people from all over the country who have been to the site, including the Smithsonian National African American Museum of Culture and History. This just flies in the face of all the basics, and just can't understand it. And then the other is the technical preservation services, the planning for National Register of Historic Places. I sent a copy of this to the city staff late because I was hoping that this would be redirected to another area where he could go and do whatever he's doing or wants to do, but just not right there. Because when people pass, and I heard you say what you said, that doesn't stop them from loving them. And that's why we have the Call paper and the Globe paper and black newspapers around the country. When people pass, they put in memorials. And so it doesn't stop people from loving them. And to have a service there and have to drive by a chicken coop and a brand new stable changes the whole atmosphere. And I would just I would beg the commission to throw a dash of humanity, since the proprietor doesn't seem to understand the big picture of what we're trying to do with the site.
Okay.
If that makes any sense.
Yes, it does. Are there any questions for this gentleman? Okay, thank you. If you'd like to come to the microphone, I need your name and address, and you can
Whoever's the chair, do y'all want a copy of this so you can circulate it amongst yourselves, since city staff may not get
You can give it to staff, and then,
I emailed it to him earlier, just close to 5 o'clock. I was hoping this moment wouldn't occur.
thank you. Yes, sir, go ahead and give us your name and address.
Real quick.
I just need your name and address first,
My name is Michael Robinson Summers.
and your address.
I grew up at 3428 North 20. I now live at 3020 North 83rd.
Okay.
I grew up on 3428 North 29th Street.
Okay,
The area that we're talking about is a graveyard area. And I'm 55. I know for at least 52, 53 years, it was a gate there where you couldn't, there was nothing never there. It was a road, it's just kind of like a dirt road and it leads around to a graveyard. It's never been nothing there. It's a graveyard, and plus it's also the John, what is it, the John Brown? Yeah, but it's like a monument. And all of a sudden now there's chicken coops, and there's like a horse or two back there, and there's some across from where this area is, right across the street, there's something else that seems like it's going to get, like he said, he got tubs and stuff back. It's like all of a sudden everything is changed. It's a graveyard. It's like it's like a monument. It's sacred ground and all of a sudden now it's just like it won't be long probably before houses are there or why is it all of a sudden happening today? And it doesn't make sense. And like the gentleman said, if you want to build somewhere, why build there? Why all of a sudden, and I don't mean to get into a color thing, but it's like, it's black folks. That's all we got. And I'm not saying anything against the Hispanics, but my point is this is all we got. And it's like, you're going to take that too? Where does it, what do we have?
So you're opposed to the livestock on this table? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask him a question?
Sure.
So are you saying that the subject property tonight is an actual graveyard?
Not the property that he's on.
Beyond that?
Yes,
Okay,
it's the
all right.
Quindale Graveyard. And for years, it was a gate there, and the gate is still there. And
The gate, where is the gate in relationship to the property we're talking about?
The gate is okay, let me see. It's right at the entrance of the road. It's like where we're talking about, sir, it's a road that goes off to the side, off of the main road, and then it's a long, little road strip, and it goes up to the graveyard. Well, for years, there's never been anything there because they only opened it when people died and let you go bury your loved ones, and then they would lock it back up. So it's never been a chicken coop, it's never been a house there, it's never been a dog, nothing's never been there. You're not living there anyway. And so all of a sudden now, we got the chicken coop thing going, and we got, like I said, a couple of horses back there, and also, I believe it's a stream back there, and I believe that stream it goes to the Missouri River, am I right? And I think that's like, I don't know the proper words, sir, but my point is all of a sudden now, and I see how it works. It starts off with this little piece here, then you'll have this little piece there, and then you have this little piece there, and people are riding their four-wheelers up in the graveyard area, and it's like, whoa, what are we doing here? We're up there, my family, we're up there laying flowers one day, sir, with Memorial Day. All of a sudden, a four-wheeler comes up, I'm like, what are you doing? But they're Hispanic, so it's not I don't know how they feel about it, but it's sacred to us.
I understand that, but it was not Mr. Del Toro on that.
Well, I don't know. I don't know him. So I don't know I don't know, sir. But my point is all of a sudden now, it's like people are just up in there. It was never like that.
Okay.
All of a sudden now it is.
Okay.
And I'm opposed to this.
All right, thank you.
And the gate is now open.
Okay. Okay, I can't have, if you're going to talk, you have to come up to the front.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask him one more question?
Sure.
So, sir, this is Quindaro Park. So was the gate here or was the gate on up the road? Was the gate right off the park?
The gate is right off the road.
Okay, all right, that's what I thought. I just want to make sure.
Yeah, right off the road, and then you go into the chicken coop and all that. But it was a gate there to keep dumping and all that out.
Okay, I got it. Sir, okay. Anyone else that wants to speak in favor of or in opposition to? Okay, if anybody else is going to speak, I need you to have you up front right now. Because if you're not up front, I'm not going to call on you. Okay, yes, sir. Name and address.
My name is Anthony Hope. I live at 3504 North 33rd Terrace.
Okay.
I live 2 blocks from the proposed area. My family came here in 1856, escaping slavery. The area we're talking about is sacred to my family and the community. They're buried on the cemetery. The road in question, we call it Happy Hollow Road, is the road the slaves actually came up. There were 7 points of entry into Quindaro, and this is one of the points. I'm a curator at the Old Quindaro Museum, and we give tours in this area, showing the brewery, the Old Quindaro Cemetery, and the whole area, which is historical. And we think this would denigrate the historical application that has been made here. I'm part of the team of community members that are trying to get this site all historical and a site for tourism. I'm part of the stakeholders meeting, and the gate is at 32nd and Sewell area. The gate, my group, the Concerned Citizens from Old Quindaro, put the gate there to stop the off-road dumping and all the vagrants and all the trash that's in the area.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any questions? Thank you, sir.
My name is Douglas Lawson. I live 32 Royal Drive, Kansas City, Kansas. In this matter, I have loved ones in this graveyard. I grew up very rural. I know what it smells like in a chicken coop. I understand the odors of a farm, and I like them, but I don't like them when I go visit my loved ones.
Thank you.
My name is Delbert Kimbrough. I live at 3800 North 33rd Terrace. I've been living in that area most of my life. I own a home that's back up there off of Sorter Drive. I've seen the change over the last 12 years of what's been taking place, and to let you be frank, I'm very upset. I've seen what it looks like when you come down 635. They had the horse stable up there, raggedy, no structure, no city reference codes or built or anything. It was just some 2x4s, some 1x4s, and some plywood thrown up. I see now that they're starting to infiltrate the area where going to the graveyard. Back where I live at, they have brought in dumps. There are dumps that they are charging people to come back there and dump their trash. There's 2 of them back there. The roads back there are no longer roads. They have gravel on them. They got mud, water drain off on them. It's gotten real bad, even to the point to where one of the roads closed down because it washed off past my home. So this changes that I'm seeing is it's not human-like. You look at these pictures, if you drive up there and take a look at it, if you compare it to Juarez, Mexico, or El Toro, wherever you want to compare it to, that's what it looks like. There's no basic building structure or code that's being done. The area going back to the cemetery, there's tents. There's really no structure. You got a 2x4 with a piece of plastic on top of it. You got a chair that's halfway made.
Are you talking about this particular property we're
I'm talking about the
tonight?
property now. You got a chair that's halfway made. There's several entities of where structures look like they want to be, but they're not of code. There's nothing back there of code. And I feel that looking at what's back there now, as opposed to what's being built or what this young man is trying to put back there, it's not going to do anything but make it worse.
Okay.
And so I'm just letting you know that the whole area back there is starting to change, and it's not changing for the better.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Well, I'm a transplant here. I can't say that I've been living here all my life. When I moved from Colorado, I found out that my grandmother was emancipated through slavery and came through that Quindaro area and eventually wind up in Tonganoxie, Kansas. So I'm a stakeholder for that Quindaro area, and as such, let me go back. My name is Mary Martin. I live at 804 South 89th.
Thank you.
So no, I don't live in the area also, but like I said, I have a kinship through my ancestors. And because of that, I think it's paramount for you guys to understand, you guys being the zoning commission of the unified government, that this is sacred land. This is sacred land that we don't want to be tampered with. Even a small stable, how big it is, no reflection on that stable, but we don't want to have you guys increase that area where it's not for the best interest of the community. I think that you should look at the community's best interest before you do anything there. And we would like for Quindaro to be a destination spot. And we start hodgepodging and throwing in anything and everything, then it decreases the value of the land, it decreases the value of the look. We had that Quindaro overlook. We just did the John Brown sculpture. We're trying to increase the aesthetics of that area. And I think that, as I said, the UG Zoning Commission should be looking at that in totality instead of looking at individual people being able to come in and do what they want to, because that is sacred ground. And you see from the attendance today that a lot of people are concerned, invested in that area, because it goes far beyond yourselves.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Yeah, oh, I'm sorry, we have a question for you, ma'am.
How did you find out about this project, what the petitioner wants to do?
Well, you know, I've always been monitoring Quindaro since I found out my family was from there. So, some of you know, I'm very political. I am a Democrat that's involved in the process. So I was at a big Democratic meeting Saturday, and people were talking about what you guys were trying to do and the fact that somebody had petitioned to further develop that land. And of course, my interest piqued, and I was just not for it. And I said I had to come down and speak on it because, like I said, we consider it a sacred land. You know, my grandmother went to the college there that y'all getting ready to tear down, that even if you don't know, Frank Lloyd Wright built that wall structure in that college. I guess you don't care about history, but that is a fact. I walked off.
Nobody here says we don't care about history. We're
Okay,
here,
well,
we're here to
I guess
hear a
you make that
request.
judgment, then
No,
maybe you do, but
we're here to
start
hear a
tearing it
request.
down.
That's why we're giving you a chance to speak as well. We're hearing his request and we're hearing your opposition. There's nobody up here that doesn't care about history. Nobody
Okay,
said that.
Okay, well,
But you found out about a meeting. That's the answer to the question, correct?
yes, Mr. Carson.
All right, thank you very much. Is there any other questions? All right, thank you. Anyone else want to speak? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Louise Libby, and I am with the Wyandotte Nation of Kansas. And we have been connected with the Quindaro area since we got here in the 1840s. We're very close with the people of Quindaro, and with that area, we're a big stakeholder in the old Quindaro Town Site Initiative, and working with the National Parks Association to create walking trails, interpretive trails all throughout that whole area, eventually visitor center, cultural center. And Pat Roberts is helping, and the other House of Representatives have also passed the commemorative site. So we are very much opposed to this. When we go to give tours down in that area, the blight along that way doesn't really give the right impression of Quindaro and the people of Quindaro. They eventually, like I said, that whole area and the town site, the ruins that are down there, the ruins that are down at the end of that road by the cemetery, which some of our families are buried there as well. We're just very concerned. We want to, of trying to keep that area as nice as possible, because the purpose of doing the historic landmark is also trying to get economic development into that area. And if you have the blight coming along and you're trying to give tours, you're trying to get people down into that area, it's not going to bode well for the community as well. So we just want to stand by our brothers and sisters in Quindaro and by the connections we have with them, past, present, and future.
Okay, thank you. Any questions?
Yes, I have a question. So same question. So ma'am, can you state again, maybe I missed it. How did you find out about the petitioner's project? Was it by happenstance, informal communication?
We're very active in the community down through there, and we have given tours along with Old Quindaro Museum and others. So we've always been aware of the blight as we go by it ourselves. And so when this project came up through communication with our other folks that work down and through there, that we needed to come and support and object to this.
Okay, thank you.
Ma'am, I also need your address for the record, please.
My address personally is 212 Northwest North Shore Drive in Lake Wacomas, Missouri.
All right, thank you. Anyone else want to speak in favor of or in opposition to the request? Okay, seeing no others, we will close the public portion of the meeting. Actually, I'm sorry, Mr. Del Toro, do you want to come back up and address some of the concerns of the neighbors about your property as far as some things not necessarily meeting code and different types of structures that you have out there? Do you have other structures on your property?
They were originally being built, and then I got a conversation with Matthew Smith. He informed me they weren't up to code, and so that's why I started the whole process. The stable that's halfway built up was built fully. I started undoing it, and then in the process just stopped and waited to see if this was going to get approved. And if it was going to get approved, that way I can already have an existing structure in there, build it and finish it. Regarding the gate, originally when I purchased the properties in there, I talked to the inspector. I forgot what his name was, but about a week ago or 2 weeks ago, I talked to Matthew Smith, and he had informed me, because there's a police officer, a sheriff, that goes there every other Sunday. He informed me to keep the gate open And so on my side, I was keeping it closed. And so I talked to Matt, and I asked him, hey, do I keep it open? Do I keep it closed? He told me the history behind it. It was closed for a while because there was a whole bunch of dumping that was being done in the area. And then there was a kind of like a little access. The inspectors, that area was not being inspected because the gates were closed. So once I believe Wyandotte County was able to get in there to inspect the area, the whole area was worse than when it started. So he informed me to just keep the gate open, and so that's what I've been doing for the last 6-7 months.
So what structures are currently on the property?
One structure on 3447 North 31st Street, the one on the right side where the mouse cursor is at, that has an 8x10 horse stable, and then so the plan was to rebuild that. And then on the left side, there was some chickens that were in the area, and a partially built kind of like a horse stable area, but since then, my plan was to not have any horses on the left side of the property. And so the original plan was to change the area into agricultural, but in order to change it to agriculture, you need, I believe, at least 5 acres to change it. And so there's no chickens, there's no animals on the left side of the property on 3456 Street, 3456 North 31st Street. So there's no animals in there currently. The only animal that's in there is on where the mouse cursor is at on the right side.
How many animals do you have there right now?
Just one.
One chicken or?
Just one horse.
One horse. Are there any chickens on the property now?
No.
Okay.
No.
Other questions for the petitioner?
Do you plan to have more chickens?
No. So the plan on the left side was to have more chickens. There was a study that I believe you guys did or somebody did out there saying that there was chickens and swine were very pollutant. So the plan is to not have any chickens in there at all.
Other questions?
I do.
Yeah, Commissioner Serta?
I just want to clarify, when you're saying the left or the right, are you talking about the property that you own that's to the west of the road?
Yes.
And then the property to the east?
So the property on the east side is parcel number, I believe, 163904. And the one across is 163902, I believe. So yes, when I'm referring to the left side, I'm referring to the one across the street.
Okay, so it's the one on the west side that you're going to leave basically untouched, but you want to locate
Yes.
this on the east side? Okay, just want to be absolutely clear. Thank you.
Commissioner Reason?
One of the things I'm looking at is on the pictures, are you calling the horse barn the one that has the truck top on it?
No, that's not the horse barn. The horse barn is more away from where that camper is at. The reason the camper was being used kind of like a little storage or meantime storage area to keep the hay dry.
Okay, I mean, to me, I'm sitting here looking at this, like I'm looking at the pictures that are here, and I can see why everybody's having an issue. Because I'm not trying to be mean, but my 8-year-old son could build something a little bit better. And that's why, and when we're in a community where we're going to have people come up and down, when we don't have plans, like I don't see any plans in here of how you're going to build it. I see that the staff you have to show that to the staff in order to get it approved. But I mean, that's the thing that's going to help you with showing neighbors, hey, I'm not sitting here continuing to do the same old that everybody else has done, but I'm going to build a nice structure that's going to look nice, and it's going to make this area look better than the way I had it. And I think that's the biggest issue that I'm hearing from everybody else is, what is your plans to make this a better site than what it is now?
So what has happened, also, there has been, and I agree with everyone, there has been a lot of trash dumping in the area. Originally, when I purchased the land, I went ahead and cleaned out the area as well. There's been tires not only in that portion of the street, but also kind of like along the road in the park. And so in that area, so if I have to knock down the whole structure and rebuild it all again, I can do that also as well. So what I wanted to do is make it look nicer. I'm not trying to pollute the area. I'm not trying to make it look bad. I'm trying to make everything up to code.
How long have you owned the property?
Probably about a year and I think almost 2 years, actually.
Okay. Commissioner Connolly?
Yeah. So if you only have one horse, why are you trying to build all this extra stuff? And then I heard some comments where people said that they smell chicken. You don't have it.
So there used to be chickens in the area.
What do you mean by used to be? I mean, they left last week?
No,
today, a year ago?
So the original citation that I got, or the violation from the inspector that I got, was about in August, and so of last year, I believe so, about last year. And so since then, about a month, 2 months later, the chickens that were sold, and they haven't been there no more. And it was chickens and roosters. The inspector, Matthew Smith, informed me that you can keep 6 chickens, registered chickens. If you want more, you have to go ahead and register them, or I believe, I may be quoting it wrong, but getting agricultural. So my plan was to get agricultural and put more chickens in there with no definite number in mind. Since seeing the report said that there was polluting the area, I decided to now go ahead and put the chickens in there.
Now, I guess the other question, I mean, you heard some of the testimony and how some of the people felt about some of this. Now, by hearing that, do you think you would keep the area a little bit cleaner, or I mean, because I mean, we need a commitment from you. I mean, we need to know. I'm with Commissioner Reason. You know, if I'd seen what the structure looked like and if it was an addition to make the community look better, but what we see now, you know, it's just hard for me to make a good decision.
I'd definitely keep it cleaner. I know there's been a lot of kind of like, I want to say finger pointing, kind of like ATV and horse riding in the area. This horse is about a year. It's not definitely rideable at all. The cemetery is still behind the road or up the road. Still have to go quite a ways up the road still, and then you finally get to the cemetery. So I've walked to that area. I definitely don't ride any ATVs. I don't even own an ATV. To answer your question, yes, I would definitely keep the area more clean than what it is out there now.
And you don't reside at that property, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions for the petitioner? Commissioner Jones, I'm sorry.
So what you just said is a nice parlay into what I was going to ask. Our report says that you don't live on the property, and so how often are you at the property?
On a daily basis.
Okay. And then, did you know that this property was considered to be of historical significance?
Not originally when I purchased the property.
Okay. And you said that was about a year and a half ago?
About a year and a half ago, purchased through the auction sales.
And so have you talked directly with anybody that was related to the property and saying that it had historical significance at all? Has anybody approached you?
No, I have not.
Okay. And just a comment, I think part of the issue that I'm feeling is that when we look in our report and we see that you had the public meeting, the neighborhood meeting, and there weren't, I think it said maybe 2 people there, not lots of questions or concerns. And I say this in part because of the audience that's here. I think part of what's going on with this particular issue is that when you have a property that's near and adjacent to an area of historical significance, because of the current rules, and staff can correct me if I'm wrong, with the proximity that you have to be in to get a notification, and that was my point on asking some of the people that spoke in opposition, how did you hear about this? Well, because, again, I'll look to staff to correct me if I'm wrong, but you don't find out formally. You may find out informally through the rumor mill, word of mouth kind of thing, and I think that is, for me, an issue in this kind of case, because that means people, and I think one of the ladies said it that was at the podium, you're a stakeholder, but you have no way of getting formal communication for a piece of property that we do know has local and national significance. And so I don't know how we rectify that, but that's kind of where I am in terms of, I'm sensitive to what the people have spoken about in terms of their loved ones that are buried there, and when I hear about ATVs and other things that are going on that aren't appropriate for a land that's designated as having historical significance, and certainly not for a land that is considered to be a sacred property. So then I would ask staff to speak to that comment, please.
Well, the notice area is 200 feet, so this property and this property, we would have gone out 200 feet by local and state law and sent notices to those people. He would have also noticed those same people for his neighborhood meeting, one of which is the Western University site, who are, I think, the most some of the most concerned people about this. But, otherwise, it would be word of mouth. There was a sign posted for this actions. So, if folks drove by, they would have seen it that way too, to know about it, just to come to the meeting tonight. But, yeah, probably a lot of word of mouth about this, but I will say it's not locally designated. The designated, this isn't even in the environs of the designated area. So, nobody would really know about what the people are telling us now, because that area within 500 feet of this isn't even designated yet.
What would you say, Rob, that you think the proximity is between what's designated and where the petitioner wants to be?
Well, I can show you. Of course, now that I say that I can, the system won't work, but we'll.
That's okay. Because while you're doing that, Rob, too, one comment that I'd make also is that it sounds like, I know as a part of the protocol, there's signage to alert people. But if you don't drive by at the right place, at the right time, on the right day, in the right time frame, then perhaps they miss it. And
Well,
what I'm-
it's out there for at least 2 weeks before the first meeting.
Right.
So if you're out there regularly, you would see it.
Yeah, but I would suggest too that people that aren't out there, you could be a stakeholder and you only go there once a month, once a quarter, once every 6 months. That wouldn't be unreasonable to me, because if,
Sure. Yeah,
One
I
of the things-
understand, yeah.
go ahead. I have another question too for Mr. Del Toro.
Okay.
So, Mr. Del Toro, could you tell us what the point and purpose of you having the chickens and the horse and any other livestock that you might have in the future?
The chickens wouldn't no longer be in there. The horse is just recreational, just as a hobby. The left side, or the one across the street from the with the address 3457 North 31st Street, that one, it was originally requested as livestock to keep chickens and roosters, but no longer going to keep that in there. So my plan was to go ahead and if possible, put a gate, just not a gate, but a kind of like a fence area. And I believe that I was informed it was supposed to be 4 feet. I can build it up to 4 feet. Anything higher than that, I'd have to request a special use permit or submit an application and repeat the process again. And down the road, originally it was just chickens. And then later probably just put sheep, if that was possible. But that would be under the application for the one across the street, which would be for livestock.
Yes, I think I did see something in the report about sheep and goats going
Yes.
forward. And so what would you be doing? What would be the point and purpose of those animals?
Just as a hobby also as well. I know for me personally, I can speak that my family grew up in Mexico in farm areas. My dad likes going out there, kind of just as a hobby.
Okay, thank you.
Rob, did you have something else to report?
No, you can just see where they are. They're just outside the buffer area for this, so that's why you wouldn't have that, the historic issue for this particular site, so.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Serta.
I just want to go back to something that you said earlier, just to clarify again. I think it's really important to be very specific in this context. So I understand from what you just told Commissioner Jones that you bought this property, use it basically for keeping livestock. But the way you described it earlier is, there were chickens there. Did you put the chickens there? Were there chickens there before you owned this property?
There weren't chickens there before the property was there.
So you built a coop?
Yes.
And you found out later that that coop was in violation of the code?
Yes.
That's different than saying there were chickens there.
Okay, sorry.
That's an important material fact that we need to consider in terms of our evaluation of this application, and also in terms of understanding the comments that are being reported to us from people in the community.
Yes, there was no chicken there originally.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions of petitioner before we go to staff comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public portion of the meeting. We'll get staff comment.
Thank you. Well, one comment I want to make is there are no Frank Lloyd Wright structures whatsoever in Kansas City, Kansas. He never built anything here. There's two in Wichita, and those are the only two in the state of Kansas. So there's no Frank Lloyd Wright. There never was any Frank Lloyd Wright in KCK. The structures that were torn down and they're already down were of no architectural significance. So one of the dilemmas here is that this is on public right-of-way. You can see that, this is a road that goes up there. It's a public road, public access, until you get to the Western University property. Now, Western University could gate their property right here, or at the road when it gets into their property, but quite frankly, anybody that doesn't have their permission going back there is trespassing at this point. Now, they may have permission, but, this is private property and a public road, and we have two pieces of property that were sold due to back taxes being owed. Mr. Del Toro bought them. He started using them inappropriately, and when he was cited, he sought to fix them. If this is approved, he will clean up the mess that's there and build one structure and have one structure there for the horses. Now, last month when we were here, the main issue was that we didn't want horses there, and then we realized that, in the time of the historical significance of this area, all they would have had was horses. And there would have been horses all over this area during the time of the Underground Railroad. Horses and trains, that's what we're talking about here. So horses being in this area would not be historically out of context because they were there then. Now, we can't say that Mr. Del Toro, there's no evidence whatsoever that he rode a four-wheeler through there, that he's turned his horses loose, that he's rode his horses there. And that's not been any of the testimony tonight. The way we looked at this is that there were horses in the area during the historical period of significance. Just like for the Truman House, all the power around the Truman House is underground now, but they have above-ground fake lines to make it look like the period. So they left fake lines in place and put power underground so it'd be more reliable in that area. So you'd have horses that would be historically significant. Now, it sounds like we have lots of enforcement issues, but I don't know that, we're dealing with one with Mr. Del Toro, and I think he said he's going to clean it up, and that would be what we would, if he cleans it up and he has all the junk that you see in the pictures cleaned up, then we'll let him build the structure if you all approve this action and the special use permit. Now, the other thing about this is that the variance is only part of the process tonight, so the variance would allow you to consider the special use permit, which is a temporary item. So if this were to ever become of more significance, or if someone were to acquire the property and want to do something different with this, it's a temporary special use permit and that can go away. It's only we've recommended it for 2 years, but it might be for just 1 year. And, until everything gets going, this was a piece of property that nobody was paying taxes on, that somebody's now paying taxes on now. In the greater scheme of the unified government, it's kind of meaningless, right? There's not that much there. But I don't know what, I suppose you could build a house on these, a new home on this property, which would be significantly out of historic context to what the Underground Railroad was. And that's, if you can't do any kind of agriculture on there, given the current zoning, that's his only other use allowed under our code. And that's how he can make economic use of this property, which is what the court allows, mandates that we allow people to do with their property. You have to make some kind of economic use. It doesn't have to be much, it doesn't have to be highly profitable, but you have to have some kind of economic use of your property. So if we just said no to this tonight, then his option would probably be to build a home on it. And that would, I think, be even worse. I think the proper course of action here would be to approve it, the variance related specifically to this, the potential of a special use permit, make that short term, and then the folks that are really interested in this area should work to acquire that property and make it part of and get a larger historic designation and put all that together. Because quite frankly, right now, and I've been to a couple of the meetings related to the Quindaro ruins and the efforts there, and they're great. That is, and that's part of the historic Northeast, or not the historic, but the Northeast Area Master Plan. History was one of the 4 or 5 pillars of that plan, and designating the Quindaro ruins was chief amongst those things that we said we wanted to do in that area for economic development, to make the area better, to preserve the history, to respect the people and what happened in that area. And I think that, we have to, how do we get to what's the best result for that? And is telling Mr. Del Toro no when we know that you're probably not going to build a house there, there's not sewer there, You'd have to clear a bunch of trees to do a septic system. And, you know, what would that do to the area? And balance what the different options really are here. And when I do that, I think that doing a short-term approval and letting, you know, folks maybe work to acquire that property. I mean, there's even another property up here in a separate ownership. This little piece up here is in a separate ownership, so we can't like vacate the street and put an easement back there that, you know, we really could gate. You know, technically, we can't gate this until it gets back here without action by the police and the Public Works Department. But if there's people regularly accessing that, we can't close off a public street. So, I mean, there's a lot of different things going in here when I look at how do we best preserve this. You know, there's a lot of junk out there now. If we say no, he could walk away, let it go back into a tax sale, and we can be at the same place in, you know, in a year or two or three. And with a new user that thinks, oh, it was a junkie before, now I can do more junk there, which is kind of how things roll in the land of delinquent taxes. You know, we see that repetitive process, and the SOAR program is trying to stop that. And you know, one of our charges was to work in this area, Bell Crossing and Soda Road, to work on these issues to find a good solution that cleans them up and gets them code compliant. And I think that we say you can't do anything until it's clean. And then, you know, you show us what you're going to build, and it's, you know, I assume it's going to be a typical stable, not something that's multi-different materialed, and, you know, it'll be a wooden structure with a composite roof or a metal roof, and it'll have room for the food to be stored and the horse to go in and, you know, be off the road, and there'll be a horse there with a little stable that people will drive by, and the rest of the area will be clean. And that permit could be withdrawn, you know, within 2 years. I think that gets us to to a really good solution for the long term. But, you know, it does seem like the folks here that are concerned with the folks driving through the graveyard and doing things inappropriately there, need to work with the landowner of that property to fence that off, or to create some kind of, you know, historically appropriate way to keep those bad activities from happening there. Because, you know, rural unmarked graveyards are very difficult to maintain and very difficult to protect. And so I think we need to do some work on that. And I think that's ongoing with the rest of the project. But at the end of the day, I think the best thing to do is to approve this with the stipulation that before he does anything else, everything gets cleaned from the site. And then, you know, we have code enforcement inspect it. Planning staff approves a modern structure that's wood with a composite or metal roof and regular siding and uniformly put together that looks nice. And, you know, approve it for 2 years and see how the historic part progresses. But, you know, I drive by a junkyard in Leavenworth on the way to my sister's grave, you know, within a half a mile on a paved county road. I don't think driving by a horse stable with a single horse there that's nicely constructed, painted, maintained is offensive. And so I don't think the other issues are related to Mr. Del Toro. They've been going on longer than he was there, especially the dumping. And if this person who said there were dumps where they charge people to dump, if you have those locations, I would love to have those. We have a group working on illegal dumping this year and targeting that specifically. So if he would provide his name and phone number to me, I can get him into contact with those folks so we can get that stopped. But at the end of the day, I would recommend approval subject to Mr. Del Toro cleaning the site of everything that's there, providing us plans for a uniformly constructed structure that's painted and maintained properly, and approve this on a short-term basis when we get to the Planning Commission meeting.
Okay, questions for staff? Commissioner Connolly.
So, Rob, you saying this is this burial site is not recognized by the city or something, or?
No, you know,
Hey, sir, I can't hear from you out there. I need to, the question is addressed to the staff. Okay, that's it. That's the last warning, sir, or we're gonna have to ask you to leave. Okay? You have to respect the order of the meeting, and the question was directed to the director, okay? Thank you.
The city recognizes the graveyard, but it's not on public property.
Okay.
And that makes it difficult. It's not like the cemetery by John Garland Park that's a public cemetery that we patrol regularly.
Okay. Any other questions for staff? Commissioner Serta.
Hi, Rob, I have two questions. One, which I'll hold off on for a second, actually relates probably more to the substance of the special use permit request. But on this point specifically, I just want to clarify. The agenda says this is a request for a second accessory structure. It sounds like it's a request for an accessory structure absent a primary use.
That's correct.
Okay. I just want to be absolutely clear about that. The other question is, the key issues on page 4 of the staff report actually says that this site does fall within the environs review area. So,
I'm sorry, it must just touch it. If it says that in there, they checked that, and I was mistaken. Sorry about that.
okay.
So, but the environs area is still, I mean, this isn't something that's going to permanently, a structure is not a permanent addition that we normally even talk about in environs things, so.
But it being within the environs, though, does suggest
Correct.
additional
You're right.
review of any structure or anything that's built within
My
that
area,
area,
yes.
correct? Okay, just want to be absolutely clear. Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Jones.
Rob, I had a question. When you say short-term, I know you mentioned 2 years, but haven't we in the past, when there were concerns, gone to 1 year perhaps?
Oh, yes, I don't know that the rest of the project is going to move fast enough to warrant the 1 year. It might, but we can terminate it at any time per cause, but I can't imagine what would go on that would, within 2 years, that would necessitate that stopping immediately. And, he's got an application fee in the future every year that's not inexpensive, and, all of this time and effort that goes into that. So you could do that either way. I don't think it's going to move that fast. And if it did move faster, I don't think this would be an inhibitor to it, because when we write up a grant, we would just say this is a temporary special use permit that if this goes through, the staff would recommend that it not be extended.
Okay. And then just for purposes of people in the audience too, hearing it as well, in addition to me asking about it, what is, so if it got taken away for cause, we're talking about a code enforcement violation?
Correct.
Okay. All right. And then my other question, Rob, was, has the city been contacted? I heard some things, but I just want clarity on this. Has the city been contacted about any master plan, if you will, with regard to Quindaro Ruins or anything that involves this section?
Oh, yeah, there's a group actively working on all of that. And there's a mapping effort, and there's a future planning effort, and Mr. Robinson could tell you in detail all of the different levels of the effort going on. But there's a very large group actively working, meeting monthly about the things going on in this area related to the Quindaro Ruins, future full historic designation, and a visitor center, preserving the ruins. I mean, there's a very extensive effort with that, as you can see from all the people here tonight.
Right. But when you say they're meeting with the city about that?
It is an independent group, and they invite city folks to attend that, and I have attended on a couple of occasions, and Mr. Robinson can verify this, but I think there's been other folks from the city that have been at those meetings as well.
And the point of me asking those questions, Rob, was to find out if there's any level of coordination, if you will, between what some of the folks, particularly in opposition and have, their stakeholders, if they've worked with the city before we got to this point.
No, I mean, Mr. Robinson's emailed me about this once he became aware of it. He said he sent me another email today, but I didn't check my email before I came down. But they're, I don't know that that group talked about this particular issue. They might have, but I wasn't at a meeting where they did. But the thing that makes it hard is it's private property on a public road that is zoned for residential uses. So, if you say no to this and he goes and builds a house there, that probably does more damage long-term to the historic nature of the area than what this action does.
Commissioner Serta, then we'll go to comment.
Just quickly, Rob, about the road, I understand the distinction between the public segment and then what becomes a private road or private property, but is that public segment from North 32nd Street, is that actually improved and maintained? Or is it more of a kind of a, eroding gravel path that heads back to the property?
Probably the latter. I don't, Mr. Del Toro could tell you if we plow it or not, but I doubt that we do.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Commissioner Connolly?
Yeah, Rob. Now, do you know if there's been any type of complaints like smell of chickens dumping before Mr. Otero took over a year and a half?
I don't know about that. I mean, you'd have to have a lot of chickens to be able to smell them very far.
Other questions for staff?
Just one, oh, go ahead.
Commissioner Reasons.
Yeah, I was just noticing, and I don't know if it's really directed towards staff, but I'm looking here at the satellite views. And of course, there's a property right next to it. And according to what it looks like, that's not Mr. Del Toro's property. That looks like a really big mess.
No, but it's under code enforcement action as well.
Okay, so that's all right. Yeah, so I mean, just speaking to the people in the audience, I mean, that's really not his property. And it's kind of, I have a feeling everybody's tying his property in with that property
This one.
as well. Yes, yeah.
Yeah, that is not Mr. Del Toro's property.
Commissioner Jones?
Okay, so Rob, with all that I've heard, I have to ask this. So do you see any value in what I would call pushing the pause button on this project? Only because if the stakeholders, whoever they consider themselves to be, for this particular, how it's impacting in their mind this area and the Quindaro ruins, any value in pushing the pause button for stakeholders to have an opportunity, you get this period of time and talk to Mr. Del Toro. And I say that because with what the concerns are, I'd like to see if there's any way that this can, if at all possible, be harmoniously worked out, and then just to demonstrate some empathy with the people that consider the area and proximity to be a sacred historical site.
Yeah, that's kind of what we did last month, quite frankly.
And nobody got with, just so
No.
we're clear then, nobody? And
How we get notified?
We came on the wrong night.
But in the meantime, what you're saying, Rob, is during the cleanup period and the codes period and everything else, that's the period we're talking about. I mean, you're
Correct.
looking at a structure, I mean, it's a stable and it's a horse, and that's the request.
Right. And, I mean, I struggle with this one too, but, if you say no, it's not going to get cleaned up. If you say yes for a 2-year special use permit, we have an incentive for cleanup.
Further questions for staff? Seeing none, I'll stand for a motion. Sorry, we've already closed the public portion. Stand for a motion.
Motion to approve per staff stipulations.
Motion approved by Commissioner Reasons. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Huey. Any discussion? Is this for a period of 2 years?
No, Mr. Chairman, this.
The Board of Zoning Appeals action is
I'm sorry.
permanent, but the
That's
special
right,
use
that's for
permit
the
later
special
would
use.
be.
This is just for the, yeah, sorry.
It's permanent related to this particular structure, not.
Gotcha. Okay. No further discussion. Roll call.
Cho?
Aye.
Conley?
Nay.
Ernst?
Nay.
Yui?
Aye.
Jones?
nay.
Reasons?
Aye.
Serta?
No.
You're going to need my vote.
Hang on just a second, please. I think I have 4 in favor and
3
4 opposed, and it takes 5 to pass a motion since we have 8 present. So yes, I need your vote.
Excuse me, wait, before we do this, I counted 3 in favor and 4 opposed.
That's correct. But we need 5 to pass.
Well,
to
but
pass
it's,
or
the
fail.
motion fails because it doesn't
I've
have,
got, you're right, I'm sorry.
the motion fails.
Okay. Sir, I'm not going to address you, okay? That's the last time I'm going to tell you, okay? The public portion of the meeting has been closed. If you can't respect the meeting, I am going to have to ask you to leave. That's the last time I'm going to say it. Okay, that motion has failed. Is there another motion?
Make a motion that Mr. Datero meet with the stakeholders and come back next month.
So you make
So
a motion?
is your motion to hold over then?
Yeah, hold it over.
Okay, motion is made to hold over until next month for reasons for the petitioner to get with stakeholders to see if the resolution can be arranged or approved. Is there a second?
I will.
After it's seconded. Is there a second?
I will second.
Seconded by Commissioner Ernst. Now discussion. Commissioner Jones.
So the discussion that, quick discussion I would like is the verification that I think you intended or said in your motion, Commissioner Connolly, for stakeholders. So that would be inclusive of some of the people here that aren't in proximity to get their concerns addressed.
So if, I don't have any way to contact, well, we don't know who those people are. We don't have any contact information. I'm going to set my cards up here. If they want to be a stakeholder, get one of my cards and send me your information. I'll get it to Mr. Del Toro. And quite frankly, I think they probably need 60 days. So that would be to April 13th. If the maker and seconder would amend that. I don't think, that's a large group, and I think it's just going to be difficult to make that happen in 30 days.
So April what?
13th.
April 13th.
All right.
You want to amend your motion?
I'd like to amend my motion. I make a motion that Mr. Datero meet with the stakeholders on April the 13th and
No.
that
Prior to.
prior to.
Your motion is to hold over till the April 13th meeting to give
Okay.
Mr. Del Toro and the stakeholders an opportunity to meet and come to a resolution.
Okay.
Correct.
I make a motion that, that Mr. Datero meet with the stakeholders before April the 13th
No.
meeting.
Your motion is to hold over till April the 13th,
oh.
to give him an opportunity to meet with the stakeholders before that time and come back to this body on April 13th.
Okay, I make a motion to hold it over to April the 13th
Thank you.
and for Mr. Datero to meet with the stakeholders and for all the stakeholders to get with Rob and get his card and.
So
be
such
present
meeting
at
can
the
be held. And is that okay with the second?
Yes, sir.
All right, any discussion?
Yeah, I do have one. When we say stakeholders, I mean, what are we saying here? Because as we're seeing people.
The people that come up and take Rob's card that want to be involved in that meeting.
Okay, so, but what if we come down the road and the next meeting, now we have 150 people out here saying we're all stakeholders. Do we have to hold this over again another 60?
They've had
They ain't
60
get a
days, they've had 60 days to become a stakeholder.
Okay.
All right, let's go. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Cho?
Aye.
Conley?
Aye.
Ernst?
Aye.
Huey?
No.
Jones?
Aye.
Reasons?
Aye.
Serta?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to hold over passes 6 in favor and 1 opposed until the April 13th meeting for the applicant to meet with the stakeholders concerning this application.
Stakeholders and interested parties. Okay, thank you. All right,
Mr. Chairman, would you like to make an announcement about the Planning Commission meeting?
yes, the Planning Commission will convene once this meeting has ended. We still have 2 cases to hear. We'll be taking a short break in between the meetings, so right now, we're 40 minutes behind for those of you at the Planning Commission, but we're going to try to keep rolling. So if you'll please call the next case.
And if we could get everyone to clear the commission chamber that their application's done so we can move on, that would be great. Appeal number 2359, Blaine McCann with Piper Unified School District, number 203, for property at 13021 Leavenworth Road. Does any member of the board have any contact to disclose with regard to this case?
No.
All those for and against, please come to the front of the room.
Yes, sir. Go ahead and give us your name and address for the record and tell us about your project.
Sure,
And I'm
my
sorry,
name-
Rob, we need IT to work on Mr. Serta's computer. Go ahead, please.
Yes, my name is Blaine McCann. I'm with John Glessner, the architect of our project. I'm the interim superintendent at Piper USD 203. My address is 3130 North 122nd Street, Kansas City, Kansas. And we're here tonight to ask for a variance on the number of trees that are going to be planted on our construction project. We have submitted an updated plan, been working with the staff here to reduce the number of trees by approximately 150 to, from about 583 trees to approximately 15 trees, something like that. I don't know what number we finally landed on.
And what's the reason for asking for the variance? Don't want to do it, or?
No, we wanted to be able to, what we were doing, when we were able to count some of our older trees that are along the fence line. Those trees are not in great shape and don't look great. We want to clean out our fence line, especially along the east side of the property, be able to put a nice fence in there and clean it up. But for us to be able to afford to do that, we need to count those trees as part of the 583. In addition, the UG Sewer Project has also gone through and has reduced some of those trees just by virtue of what they needed to do with the project and took some of the trees out. So for us to be able to afford entirely that, we're going to count some of those trees that were really not the best trees. So we want to go back, revise our landscaping plan, and be able to plant trees so it looks really nice for our community.
Questions for the petitioner? So what's the final reduction in the number of trees you want to reduce it from and to?
I think I know Rob and I
Yeah,
have a couple.
it's from 536 to 400, a reduction of 136.
Yeah, thank you. I know we've gone back and forth with it a couple times.
Questions for the petitioner? Okay, seeing none, I will open up the public portion of the meeting. Is there anyone who wants to speak in favor of or in opposition to the request? Seeing none, we'll close the public portion of the meeting. We'll get staff comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'd recommend approval, subject to the stipulations in the staff report.
Questions for staff? Okay, seeing none, I'll stand for a motion.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion approved by Commissioner Serta, seconded by Commissioner Jones. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Cho?
Aye.
Conley?
Aye.
Ernst?
Aye.
Yui?
Aye.
Jones?
Aye.
Reasons?
Aye.
Serta.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to approve this appeal, subject to the stipulations, passes 7 in favor and none opposed.
Okay, thank you.
Our last item on the agenda is Appeal Number 2366, Doug Clements for Unified School District Number 500 for property at 2100 North 18th Street. Does any member of the board have any contact to disclose with regard to this case?
No.
All those for and against, please come to the front of the room.
Good evening.
Hello, how are you?
Name and
Mr.
address,
Chairman?
please.
Yeah, Doug Clements with the Kansas City, Kansas Public School District at 2010 North 59th, KCK.
Keep in mind, we're 136 trees short on school property, so we might just stick them to you.
Okay. We want to put up some signs, similar to other variances that we come before. By the way, I also have Megan Barnes with Hollis and Miller, our design group for this project. We're building a very large middle school, 140,000 square foot in a residential area, and so the typical size zone or sign that you would have in a residential area is not really appropriate for a great big school like that, so we're putting in appropriate size signage for our middle school.
Okay, questions for the petitioner? Seeing none, is there anyone in the audience who wants to speak in favor of or in opposition to the request? Seeing none, we'll close the public portion. We'll get staff comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'd recommend approval, subject to the stipulations in the staff report.
Any questions for staff? Seeing none, I'll stand for a motion.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Serta, seconded by Commissioner Huey. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Cho?
Aye.
Conley?
Aye.
Ernst?
Aye.
Yui?
Aye.
Jones?
Aye.
Reasons?
Aye.
Serta.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to approve this appeal, subject to the stipulations, passes. 7 in favor and none opposed.
Thank you very much. Okay, this will conclude the agenda for the Board of Zoning Appeals. We'll take a 5-minute break and we'll convene at 7:20, the City Planning Commission. Okay, we're going to call the Planning Commission to order. Ms. Parker's going to read the opening one. Actually, I have something I want to read first. So as chairman of the Planning Commission, it's my honor tonight to do a little recognition. So I have a proclamation that I want to read to everybody. So, whereas Robin H. Richardson, AICP, was appointed the Director of Planning on August 18, 2003, and whereas Rob has advised the Board of Zoning Appeals and City Planning Commission in a forthright and professional manner, and whereas he will be remembered for his fair and unbiased treatment of all citizens coming before the Board of Zoning Appeals and Kansas City Planning Commission, and whereas Rob will also be remembered for never being in his chair at the beginning of the meeting. And I should insert another little whereas where sometimes he forgets to turn off his phone during meetings as well. But whereas he has served as a conscientious and dedicated team member of the Department of Urban Planning and Land Use, and whereas he consistently demonstrated through word and action a deep concern for his community, its present and future well-being, and whereas he has steadfastly promoted the interests, goals, and objectives of the unified government of Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas, and whereas he is leaving his duties as Director of Planning for a new role in the unified government as the Director of Development, Coordination, and Customer Success. Now, therefore, the Kansas City, Kansas, Now, therefore, the Kansas City, Kansas City Planning Commission and Kansas City, Kansas Board of Zoning Appeals wish to recognize and commend Robin H. Richardson, AICP, for his contributions to the commission, board, and community during his tenure as the director. Rob, congratulations.
Janet? Thank you all very much. It's been a pleasure, and I think that the work that you do is hard work. As you saw earlier this evening, it's not always easy. It's hard to find the right path to a solution sometimes, and that's been the most rewarding part of this, is working with you all to find those hard paths to good solutions. And thank you all very much. And I want to thank my staff, because they're the ones that really make me look good. So thank you, especially you, Turkey. Your turn.
Thank you. So I get the pleasure of having two proclamations tonight, or getting to speak about someone else that's very near and dear to the Planning Commission of the Board of Zoning Appeals, and this is in recognition of Janet Parker, Recording Secretary of the Kansas City City Planning Commission, a humble servant for more than 500 Planning Commission meetings. So if you can imagine doing this 499 more times, Janet has already done that in the 42-plus years that she has been a member or been an employee of the Planning Commission staff, and a 45-year tenured employee of the unified government. So I want to thank you for your outstanding years of service to our community. So you get to come down here and you get to say something.
Well, this is certainly a surprise, because usually I'm the one that gets to write them, but it has been my privilege to serve in the planning department since 1974. And I told Rob when he came to work here that I had outlasted 5 planning directors, and I'd outlast him, and I was right. Although it is extremely difficult to see him go, and I don't know how he's going to survive without me. But
That is true.
we have an awesome team in the planning department. It's my privilege to work with the Planning Commission, but more importantly, to work with all the citizens in this community, because a lot of them, like Elnora over there, has become a very dear friend of mine. And I'll probably be here for a couple more years, and that's it. So, all right. Thank you so much.
Okay, I've checked my drawer and I don't have any more awards to hand out, so Ms. Parker will read the opening statement for the 501st time.
Before I do that, I would like to call the Planning Commission and the audience attention to consent agenda item B1, Cabela's replat at 10300 Cabela Drive, and non-consent agenda item B2, special use permit SP 2019-115 for Andrew Nearing for a special use permit for the continuation of a short-term rental Airbnb at 3101 South 7th Street. Those two applications were withdrawn today, and there will be no further hearing on them. Also, Mr. Chairman, before I read the statement, I believe that since we held over Mr. Del Toro's appeal, that, and if there's anyone here in the audience for the two special use permits, which are SP 2019-117 and SP 2019-118 at 3447 North 31st Terrace and 3456 North 31st Terrace, that we probably should go ahead and take action on them before we move further.
All right, thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, a motion to hold over to April 13th would likely be appropriate.
Do I have a motion to hold over both of these cases until the April 13th meeting, pending the action of the Board of Zoning Appeals?
So moved.
Second.
Motion to hold over to April 13th by Commissioner Serta, seconded by Commissioner Jones. Any discussion?
Just one quick question, Mr. Chairman. Those are both items together?
Correct.
Correct.
Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call on the motion to hold over.
Mr. Chairman, could we just take a voice
Sure.
vote, please?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Motion passes.
And then that motion to hold both of those over passes 7 in favor and none opposed. We would like to welcome all present to the meeting of the City Planning Commission. Mr. Jeff Carson is serving as chairman this evening. The Planning Commission is a voluntary body of citizens which will review each zoning proposal. For all change of zones, special use permits, vacations, and preliminary plan reviews on tonight's agenda, the Planning Commission makes recommendations to the Unified Government Board of Commissioners, who will then make the final decisions on Thursday, February 27, 2020. For final plats and final plan reviews heard tonight, the Planning Commission's decision is final, and there will not be another hearing. The format for this evening's meeting is as follows. As each application is called, we would ask that all those both for and against to please come to the front of the room. The applicant will make the opening statement explaining the proposal. Please note that the applicant will be given 15 minutes to present their case. The 15 minutes includes the applicant, consultants, and other members of the applicant's team. Members of the Planning Commission will then address any questions they may have to the applicant. Any persons wishing to speak in favor will be allowed to do so at that time. Then those persons in opposition will be allowed to make their statements and ask questions. Please note that each member of the public who wishes to speak will be given 5 minutes to express their opinions. Time may not be shared between speakers. A speaker at the podium may request to extend their time, and the Planning Commission may, by 2/3 majority vote, extend any speaker's time in 5-minute increments. The applicant will then answer questions and make a closing statement. The public hearing portion of the meeting will be closed, and the public will only be allowed to address the commission if a question is directed to them. The Planning Commission will discuss the application and make their recommendation. Also, all items or exhibits submitted and/or shown either to the Planning Commission or staff during the hearing will be retained and become part of the official record of these proceedings. If persons in opposition want to formally protest a change of zone or special use permit, a means is available by a legal protest petition, which can be obtained along with the necessary instructions by calling the Urban Planning and Land Use Department at 573-5750 tomorrow morning. Any application receiving a unanimous vote of recommendation by the Planning Commission will appear on the consent agenda of the Unified Government Board of Commissioners. Unless there is a request to remove an item from the consent agenda by the applicant, a member of the Unified Government Commission, or other interested parties, the Planning Commission's recommendation will be adopted. The consent agenda is heard at the beginning of the meeting at 7 p.m. If you are interested in an item, you should appear promptly on February 27th, 2020, at 7 p.m. to see what action is taken or to ask that it be removed from the consent agenda. The Planning Commission will also have a consent agenda as part of their meeting this evening. The consent agenda is the first part of the agenda, and items on the consent agenda are final plats, final plans, or special use permit renewals that have received a staff recommendation to approve. Unless there is a request to remove an item from the consent agenda by the applicant, a member of the staff, a member of the Planning Commission, or other interested parties, the staff recommendation on all of the items on the consent agenda will be adopted by the Planning Commission at one time. I will read a list of agenda items on the consent agenda, and when I have completed the list, the chairman will ask if there are any requests to remove items. This is your time to come to the microphone and request that an item be removed from the consent agenda if you do not agree with the staff recommendation. All items not removed from the consent agenda will be approved by the commission with the staff recommendation. The Planning Commission is required to disclose contacts about any item on the Planning Commission agenda. Before each item, I will ask if any contacts have been made, and members of the commission will be asked to disclose those contacts at that time. We appreciate the attendance of those here this evening, and we recognize the seriousness of each case and each person's opinions, but would like to request that each side keep their comments as concise as possible. Your opinions will be forwarded to the governing body for their consideration in making a final decision. In addition, those who receive notices for this evening's hearing will again receive them for the hearing on Thursday, February 27th, 2020. We ask that anyone with a cell phone to please turn them off or switch to non-audio so you will not disturb the meeting. I will now read the items on the consent agenda. Consideration of the January 13, 2020 City Planning Commission minutes. Special use permit application SP 2020-12, Rachel A. McMeechan. Renewal of a home occupation special use permit for a live workspace for aerial classes at 556 Lowell Avenue. Special use permit application SP 2020-15, Scott and Rebecca Johnson. Renewal of a special use permit for office, shop, vehicle recycling, and storage of up to 3 cars and trailers on site at 521, 523, and 525 South 11th Street. The items I have just read are on the consent agenda. At this time, does any member of the commission wish to disclose any contact on any of these items?
No.
Please include the following items as part of the record for all of the items on the consent agenda: the city's currently adopted zoning and subdivision regulations, the official zoning map for the area in question, the city's currently adopted master plan for the area in question, the staff report and attachments dated February 10, 2020, the application and other documents, plans, pictures, and maps submitted by the applicant in furtherance of the case and contained in the official file, the publications in the Echo, and the notices to property owners. The commission will vote to approve in one vote these items unless someone comes forward and asks that an item be removed from the consent agenda.
Is there anyone in the audience who would like to have anything removed from the consent agenda for separate consideration? Okay, is there anyone on the commission that would like to have anything removed for special consideration? Okay, seeing none, I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Jones, seconded by Commissioner Connolly. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Cho?
Aye.
Conley?
Aye.
Ernst?
Aye.
Yui?
Aye.
Jones?
Aye.
Reasons?
Aye.
Serta?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to recommend approval of the items on the consent agenda, subject to the staff's comments and suggestions, passes 7 in favor and none opposed.
Thank you.
And, Mr. Chairman, those special use permits will go before the Board of Commissioners on February 27th at 7 p.m.
Thank you.
That completes the consent agenda, and we will now move on to the non-consent agenda. We have 2 items that we are going to hear together. Change of zone application 3214, Brandon Becker with BCB Holdings LLC. Change of zone to remove stipulation for a pedestrian trail connection to Leavenworth Road for Piper Creek Estates at 3316 North 131st Street. This change of zone, or this property was previously rezoned to R1 Single Family District. And the other item is Piper Creek Estates, final plat for 46 single-family lots at 3316 North 131st Street. Please include the following items as part of the record for this case. The city's currently adopted zoning and subdivision regulations, the official zoning map for the area in question, the city's currently adopted master plan for the area in question, the staff report and attachments dated February 10, 2020, the application and other documents, plans, pictures, and maps submitted by the applicant in furtherance of the case and contained in the official file, the notice in the Wyandotte Echo dated January 16, 2020 for the change of zone application, and the notices to property owners dated October 17th, November 1st, and December 3rd for the plat, and January 15, 2020 for the change of zone application. Does any member of the commission have any contact to disclose with regard to this application?
No.
All those for and against, please come to the front of the room.
Good evening. Go ahead and give us your name and address and tell us about your project and your request.
Sure. My name is Mark Brewer. I'm with Schlegel. Our address is 14920 West 107th in Lenexa, Kansas. With me is Brandon Becker, developer of the project. And so, as it mentions in the staff report, this request concerns the removal of stipulation to construct a trail.
Okay, can you go ahead and talk to the microphone, please?
Sorry. This pertains to remove a stipulation from the original zoning approval to remove a trail connection to either the Whispering Pines subdivision or to Leavenworth Road. When this stipulation was added, through the application process, the developer objected to it, or I guess didn't see a clear path of how he was to construct this trail on other people's property. So we are either required to connect through an adjacent subdivision or through to the south to Leavenworth Road to the new Piper Elementary School, about approximately 1,200 feet, through an existing UG easement. And so we objected to that stipulation. However, the developer at the time of approval was optimistic that he could work with the adjacent subdivision into getting that connection through Whispering Pines. And so we proceeded with approval of the original zoning request. Over the past year, those negotiations have not been fruitful. And I'll let Mr. Becker speak to his efforts in trying to work with that HOA for the Whispering Pines. What he tasked us with, our firm, was to explore the option of extending the trail to the south. And so we looked at industry standard design criteria. 5%, if you look at the aerial map there, where I have the exhibit, this is in figure 1 in the packet, but basically running south, this is Leavenworth Road down here on the bottom of the map, but as we run to the south there, that's the easement we're asked to review to run into, and as you would imagine in a utility easement, there's existing power poles, there's an existing fence. We're talking about to construct this cuts, well, the profile we showed was that if we could run it at 8%. That's not a recommended grade to run. That results in an unsafe condition, but we used that as a starting point, and that resulted of cuts and fills in excess of 8 feet, retaining walls. So in approximately a 14-foot wide easement, we're trying to get a 10-foot trail. You're required to have a clear zone on the outside of that trail, if you can imagine that, and then also accommodate power poles, fences, and other things, and then tie those grades back together. So it is not physically possible in that easement to in that existing easement to construct that trail. And it's our findings that it's not reasonably safe to construct that trail at the grade shown. The grades would be very steep, they would go to a horizontal turn, and we wouldn't recommend, there's a lot of industry guidance that strongly recommends against constructing the trail with that alignment. Additionally, as you move to the south, when we went through our original stipulation process, it was, the whole reason we were doing this is to connect to the new elementary school as part of the master trail plan. And we asked the question, well, how does this trail connection potentially to the south coordinate with the improvements to Leavenworth Road that the school's doing? And we were informed that, well, the school's going to be required to build a trail on the north side of Leavenworth Road and on the south, so that people could get down to Leavenworth Road, students could get down to Leavenworth Road and then go to 131st Street, cross there where there would be a crosswalk or crossing guard, and cross the road. Well, based on our current understanding of what the plans are for Leavenworth Road at this time, based on advertised improvement plans for Leavenworth Road, and I'm not sure what other conversations have happened, but based on our knowledge, those plans do not include any sidewalk or public trail on the north side of Leavenworth Road or any crossing of Leavenworth Road. So one way or another, at least what plans we have, it's not apparent how they get to the school now. So even if we do build our trail down that existing easement, there is no connection to the school in that area. So again, I don't want to take up all of Mr. Becker's time to kind of give his side of the things, but it bears mentioning that this all comes down to meeting in the trail master plan for the community, the Piper Delaware study, and the overall trail connection. Mr. Becker's not trying to get around that. He's building this trail in yellow. This provides connection. The trail for Whispering Pines stops over here further east. We can't go on their property, and they have voted not to let us construct the trail on their property. So he is constructing this approximately 1,300 feet of trail to provide, there is no trail on this west side, but we're getting the trail across his property, and he's getting the trail across his property. And he sees that as meeting the spirit and intent of the trail master plan for the community. And it's simply asking, due to the economic infeasibility, at least going south, he cannot build this trail. He doesn't have the legal right to do it on other people's property. There's not enough easement, and if he could do it, it would be incredibly cost prohibitive. So I don't want to take, like I said, all of Brandon's time, but I'll let him speak to his efforts in trying to negotiate with the Whispering Pines HOA.
Before you step away, is there any questions for this gentleman? Okay, go ahead, Mr. Becker.
Good evening. My name is Brandon Becker with BCB Development. Our address is 616 North Rogers Road, Olathe, Kansas, 66062. As been stated, I'm faced with a true conundrum here. So the situation that I'm faced with was I agreed to essentially put in a trail network, right? And I agreed to put that trail network in, which we are doing across our property. The issue that I ran into is the adjacent subdivision, Whispering Pines. I've met with them on 4 different occasions, including attending 2 of their, and this is over the course of the last 14 months, including attending 2 of their neighborhood meetings. There's very emphatic support of not wanting a trail on their property for whatever reason. To be honest with you, I was pretty surprised. It just wouldn't be something, I kind of view a trail as, especially trail network, as a beneficial, especially in subdivision areas, as a beneficial thing to residents, both residents of our potential or of our proposed subdivision as well as other subdivisions. They were adamantly opposed for, they don't want people behind their property. It was very, we want to just be out on our own, and this is where we're at. So I've been unable to convince, they put it up for vote a couple times over in that subdivision in Whispering Pines. They absolutely refuse to allow an easement for me to connect to their trail. And it's engineeringly impossible to connect to the south to Leavenworth Road. And we're building a new school here. I'm trying to put in, I mean, it's not a very large subdivision. We're only talking 44 homes, 66 overall in phase 2. I don't have a lot of options. Actually, I have 0 options at this point for proceeding with the project because there's no path forward.
Okay, so, I'm sorry, the first phase is 44 lots. What's the second phase, 22?
22, I think. Yeah, I think it's 66 total.
Okay. And how many power poles that are in the way?
6 to 8. Yeah. And if you look at the engineering of it, you know, a lot of these areas would require 8-foot retaining walls. And if from a constructability perspective, generally you would have to run geogrid and tie those walls in because anything over 4 feet requires engineering. We'd probably be talking about requiring roughly a 40-foot easement on other people's property running all the way to Leavenworth Road, where currently there's roughly a 12-foot easement. So I literally have 0 options to proceed with the project, and we're obviously a new school is opening August 1st, and looking at putting in rooftops to support that school.
Questions for the petitioner? Commissioner Serta?
I'm not terribly familiar with the adjacent subdivision. Where exactly is the trail network there that if they would grant you permission, you'd be able to build?
They really don't have, there's no trail network. There's some what I would call deer trails and some kind of.
Mulch trails is a good way to put it.
Looking at the aerials, I could see what looked like some pathways, maybe near the creek. Is that
Yeah, and
roughly in
that's
that
one
vicinity?
area to the south of the Whispering, kind of the middle of the Whispering Pines area.
Again, I just want to make sure I understand your challenge. So essentially, if they would allow you to, which they're not, you would essentially, your trail would head to the east, a little bit south, but primarily to the east.
Yeah, it's
And because they won't,
it's shown
your
on,
alternative would be go due south.
in your packet, it's shown in green, which were our 2 options. So we would connect, yellow is the trail that we've all the way through our property. Connecting in green is where we would pick up the Whispering Pines Trail if they would allow it. And then running south is the green line to the school.
Gotcha.
Those were the 2 options.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll open up the public portion of the meeting. Is there anyone in the audience that wants to speak in favor or in opposition to this request? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to staff and get staff recommendations.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I may have missed it in previous communications, but I hadn't heard the need for the 40-foot easement before. I mean, that, constructability, I mean, we can build whatever we want, but the cost, and I've never heard the final cost number. I don't know if they have that or not. It would be probably nice to hear that before we make a final decision tonight. If you might ask them to come up and tell them what they estimated that cost at to build the trail and that easement. But assuming that with great lengths of retaining walls that are that high, it would seem to all of us to be cost prohibitive. I don't really see any choice but to let them build the trail that they've shown in yellow across the property and approve the request as submitted.
Questions for staff?
Yeah, just want to be crystal clear, Rob. So the requirement would still be in place to build the yellow, which is east to west, basically to connect to 131st Street, and then that little sort of stub that connects up into the subdivision.
Correct.
And then it would basically waive the requirement to build south to Leavenworth.
Yeah, they would not have to build in the easement. The easement would still be there, and they wouldn't necessarily connect. It might point that direction, but it won't connect. Leave it a few feet short of the property line, so there's no real connection there, and then the neighbors in the future can work it out. I'm sure in 10 years, they'll all be wanting to use each other's trails, but right now, that's not the case.
Okay.
Other questions for staff? Can one of you step forward? Do you have a cost figure on putting in the trail?
Yeah, we had a cost estimate of $425,000 to put in the trail, and that doesn't include the relocation of the utility poles.
Any questions based on that information? Okay. Rob, do you have anything else you want to add based on that information?
No, sir.
Okay. Seeing no more discussion, I'll stand for a motion. And the first one will be on the change of zone.
Motion to approve with staff stipulations.
Motion to approve change of zone request made by Commissioner Curtis, second by Commissioner Reasons. Any discussion?
That is revised without requiring the connection to the south, correct?
Yes.
Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Cho?
Aye.
Conley?
Aye.
Ernst?
Aye.
Huey?
Aye.
Jones?
Aye.
Reasons?
Aye.
Serta?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to recommend approval, subject to the stipulation, passes 7 in favor and none opposed.
And now I'll entertain a motion on the final plat.
Motion to approve the final plat per revised staff stipulations.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Curtis, second by Commissioner Cho. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Cho?
Aye.
Conley? Aye. Ernst?
Aye.
Huey?
Aye.
Jones?
Aye.
Reasons?
Aye.
Serta?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to approve passes 7 in favor and none opposed.
Okay, thank you. Both of these will be heard again on February 27th at 7 p.m. in this room.
Mr. Chairman, that takes us to our special use permits. The first one is SP 2019-102, Browning Ferris Industries. Special use permit for a solid waste hauling facility with solid waste transfer station addition at 3150 North 7th Street Traffic Way. Please include the following items as part of the record for this case. The city's currently adopted zoning and subdivision regulations, the official zoning map for the area in question, the city's currently adopted master plan for the area in question, the staff report and attachments dated February 10, 2020, the application and other documents, plans, pictures, and maps submitted by the applicant in furtherance of the case and contained in the official file, the notice in the Wyandotte Echo dated September 19, 2019, the notices to property owners dated September 12, October 10, November 1, and December 3, 2019, and January 8, 2020, and the 3 additional emails in opposition received today from Melissa Clark, Executive Director of the Fairfax Industrial Association, from Central Solutions Incorporated at 401 Funkston Road, Capital Electric Construction Company Incorporated at 2801 Fairfax Traffic Way, and Ergon Armor and UAW Local 31. At this time, does any member of the commission have any contact to disclose with regard to this application?
No.
All those for and against, please come to the front of the room.
Who's going to speak on behalf of the applicant? Okay. Good evening. Can I get your name and address and tell us about your project?
Yes, good evening. Katie Council. I'm at, my business is at 3150 North 7th Street Traffic Way, Kansas City, Kansas. And I'm Katie Council. I'm with Republic Services, General Manager here for the greater Kansas City area. And we are going to be kind of laying out a presentation that we built on our current facility, which is which houses our trucks and office. And we are going to be proposing, and we'll show you that, also adding a special use permit for an MSW transfer station, which we actually used to have. The building is still existing on that facility, and we'll show you that today too. So.
Hi, I'm Michelle Clark. I'm with Weaver Consultants Group, 6301 East Highway AB, Columbia, Missouri. So just for clarification, the application on the property owner is Browning Ferris Industries. The hauling business that's currently operational there is Allied Services. Both Allied Services and BFI are wholly owned subsidiaries of Republic Services, which is the second largest waste management company in the United States. Like Katie indicated, the facility did have a transfer station. It was on the western portion of the property. The building still sits there. It held a special use permit till 2006, but has not operated as a transfer station. whereas the eastern portion of the facility is where the hauling operations currently occur. And the hauling operations are, you have a storage and maintenance of the roll-off containers, the maintenance facility for the fleet, and then the property to the south is Stericycle, which is the medical waste incinerator, and that is a separate and unrelated business to the hauling operations. Oop, sorry. So this is the proposed layout, and so we have quite a few improvements to get the facility back up to what is considered a transfer station to today's standards. We're proposing on the northeast corner to the entrance will be further to the north. We also are going to need a scale and a scale house, which is somewhat in the middle of the facility. Also shown on here is the route traffic. The traffic comes in from the north side and then entered the building, backing into the building. Waste is dumped on the floor. We're proposing a transfer at a bay on the southern portion of that building in order for pull-through of the transfer station itself. So just to kind of give you an explanation of the operations of a municipal solid waste transfer station, and that, once they enter the facility, the vehicles are directed to the scale house, they're weighed at the scaled house, and then the vehicles are directed to the transfer station building where they back in, they dump the waste onto a concrete pad. From that, a front-end loader loads the waste into a transfer trailer truck. Then the transfer trailer is tarped within the building, and then once tarped, the transfer trailer is hauled to the Courtney Ridge landfill, which is in Sugar Creek. So there are liquids that are in municipal solid waste. The liquids will be collected, and they will be handled as wastewater. So the proposed use, so one of the big components of this project is the current hauling operation. The majority of that operations will be sent to removed from the site before the construction of the transfer station, so that we have enough room for the infrastructure to support the transfer station. And as I previously mentioned, the upgrades include moving the entrance on the northeast area, adding a scale and scale house, constructing a transfer trailer loading pit on the south side, and there's actually a pit right now, which was the old way of loading trash. That'll be filled in, and then we'll put concrete. We've developed a good housekeeping plan that was included in the special use permit, the response to comments. All waste will be removed within the 24-hour period. The tipping floor will be cleared at least once a day by 10 p.m. each day. We're going to dry sweep the tipping floor, and then also weekly we'll power wash the tipping floor as well as the walls. There will be daily litter control along the entire property, not just within the facility. We'll have routine pest control. Dust control we typically handle through sweeping of the roads and even within the building. Also, they have implemented a daily odor inspection and odor mitigation procedures. And what that consists of is them actually patrolling the property and seeing if there's any odors. Part of it, we also committed to developing a hotline for odor complaints or operations of the facility. I just want to iterate that, this is only for residential waste and commercial waste. There won't be any hazardous waste, medical waste, no asbestos, no special waste. We're not going to take liquids or paints, no sludges, no waste that require special handling, or no noxious waste. So it's typical municipal solid waste and commercial waste. What we're proposing is a 1,000-ton maximum per day of municipal solid waste. Based on Republic Services area of service, they're anticipating to be about 10 miles. It will be open to the public, so other people will be able to come in there, which may exceed that 10-mile radius. In order to lessen the impact on the residential area to the south, we're going to direct the commercial traffic to enter from the north, and then actually exit to the side, or come in from the north and then actually exit back going north. We also put where we staged the scale house and the scales is quite a distance into the facility, and the intent of doing that is so that the vehicles would queue inside the property rather on 7th Street traffic way. So we did evaluate traffic counts for the area. We have another facility in the Kansas City metro area and looked at the waste, the traffic that's going into and from that facility. What's shown in here is, in blue, is existing traffic, and what's yellow is what we anticipate after the transfer station is operational. As you can see, the current hauling operations, we currently have some peaks in there around 3 a.m. and also around 2 p.m. That's when the trucks are coming in and out the most. With the relocation, the majority of the hauling operation, we anticipate a more consistent traffic count over the 24-hour period. So we appreciate you considering our special use application. We anticipate that the investment to get the facility up to code is about $5 million, and so it's a huge investment for us. So that's it.
Okay. Questions for the applicant? So can you explain what your business does now without the transfer facility?
That's sure.
So currently, we have about 60 routes that we run out of there for commercial, industrial, and residential customers. So what's happening is, and then that building, that existing building right now, we actually use as a welding shop in operation. So we will be renovating that for the transfer station and moving our welding shop and about 40 out of the 60 routes to a different location whenever we get this set up.
So the waste doesn't come there now?
No, the waste is not
So
coming there now.
the trucks just leave, they collect the waste, and they go on out to Sugar Creek?
Yes.
Wherever it's going to go?
Correct, or we also own a transfer station off Winchester Avenue in Kansas City, Missouri.
Is that where they go now?
Either there or Sugar Creek, depending on where they end up that day. Mhm.
Okay. So what precipitates the need to have a transfer station at this location?
We would like to use the transfer station at this location for that 10-mile radius. Right now, obviously the location we have in Kansas City, Missouri is a bit farther away. So the new site that we're using would use that, and then we'd be able to use this one as well.
So this is for efficiencies?
Yes.
Okay. Other questions? Commissioner Jones?
So what was the reason that
Your mic's not on.
What was the reason, I'm sorry, the previous application that was submitted in 2006 was withdrawn?
I can answer that. So at that time, it was right when Forest View Landfill, which is in the Kansas City area, was about to close. At that time, based on the amount of waste that the Republic was managing that area, it wasn't needed.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Okay, seeing none, we will open up the public portion of the meeting, and I'm sure you all are just spectators, correct? So is there anyone who wants to speak in favor of this project? Please come forward. Okay, those of you in opposition. Now, are you going to have one speaker, or are you going to have multiple speakers? Who's going to speak? Let's see. On behalf? We've got two speakers, and then those of you that want to be recognized as in opposition, if you'll raise your hand, Ms. Parker will take a count. So those in opposition, okay?
Okay, I got him, thank you.
Got it? Okay, great, thank you. So, ma'am, would you go ahead and come to the microphone, please? Give us your name and address, please. You're on deck.
I'm Melissa Clark. Do you want my home address or my business address?
Whichever one you want to give me for the record.
Okay, 3250 Brinkerhoff Road. So it's down there in Fairfax. So I am the director for the Fairfax Industrial Association, and we do not have a slideshow, but Rob said I could bring these brochures, or it's just a letter explaining why we would oppose having the transfer station. So I'll go ahead and start. How long do I have?
5 minutes.
5 minutes? Okay, I'll try to be quick. So anyways, we were not aware, the Fairfax Association was not aware of the special use permit application until mid-December, and someone with Republic Services reached out to us. So then we began talking to businesses around in Fairfax, especially those that are on that contact list that are within 200 feet of this property. So what we found is that the following property owners that are within 200 feet of this property and will be opposing make up more than 60% of that surrounding area. Part of those property owners, these are like the legal names that are listed on the contact list. Brown Kevin, J.A. Ross Industries, Mana Pro Products, Quinn Teresa, Sunshine Biscuits, and the Keebler Company. So basically what you're looking at is adjacent to those properties, you have Mana Pro and Kellogg's that are food manufacturers. And then some other ones, Industrial Lumber Care. So the additional businesses so far, it's taking a while since we weren't aware of this until mid-December, but this continues to grow. There's businesses, these are the businesses that are opposed so far, is CE Distribution, Capital Electric, Central Solutions, Ergon Armor, Neff Packaging, Reardon Pallet, UAW Local 31. We have a Fairfax Drainage District is the municipality in Fairfax. It takes care of all of our drainage issues, and they are also opposed. Steve Daly will speak on behalf of that. And then I just didn't get a chance to add, but the BPU Quindaro plant will also be opposing. So following is a list of reasons why. In the past, there was a transfer waste station there. It was back in the 1970s or 80s that it was in operation. There's very few people around that remember that, but there is someone here today that has a family business that was there. And that transfer station, there were issues with odors, rodents, and trash. And so it was a big issue back then. They were happy to see it go, and weren't even aware that the special use permit had expired. There's also sewer, soil, and air contamination issues. Part of our FIA group went and saw the transfer station at the Kansas City, Missouri location. And when we met with them, we had asked for it's leach-it data. I don't know if I have that correct. But if you read through there, Steve Daly with the Drainage District got with Scott Craig, who's a UG Water Pollution Control, and he reviewed this data. And there were several areas like the arsenic, lead, zinc, calcium, and copper concentration values exceeded ordinance levels for the Kansas City area, the Wyandotte County. So that would have to be addressed. There was also oil and grease, chemical oxygen demand, and total suspended solids, which would also be subject to additional treatment. Lastly, Scott Craig also suspicion that there would be possible odor issues with nitrogen. I don't know if I'll say this right, phenolics, benzene, ethylbenzene, and toluene discharge. Currently, we already have another business in Fairfax that has a special use permit, and I believe it goes on for 10 years. It's Liquid Environmental Solutions. They are a non-hazardous waste company that takes non-hazardous waste, brings it into Fairfax, I believe turns it into like solid material and removes it. But some of those materials, those liquids, go down into the sewer systems. Throughout some of these years, especially in the summers, there will be an odor, and it's not really even at their facility, but it goes through the sewer system. And it smells so bad that neighboring businesses have had several employees go home sick. So it's an issue for us, and we're concerned that this is going to be an even bigger issue.
Melissa, you have 1 minute.
Okay, thanks. They were also worried about the increase in pests, rodents, and birds. Obviously, food manufacturing companies, to be licensed as a food manufacturing company, you have to comply with all that. And the traffic study, there was also, although the actual traffic count doesn't change, when I'm talking with Republic Services, we realized that 40 of their traffic count in what it is right now, that would actually, that's the employees that are there, but they would remove that office. So the personal vehicle count would go down. The truck count, the trash truck count would go up, even though it looks like there isn't really a change. But there is a change in the type of vehicle. There would be 48 more trash trucks going through there daily. FIA visited Republic Services, as I explained, their transfer station. Some of the members of FIA, we witnessed trash along the streets not even adjacent to their property, but throughout, that gets blown around. There was also a definite trash odor despite the cool temperatures when we went there. So we're concerned that again, in warmer temperatures, it'll be worse.
Your time is up. You can request an additional 5 minutes from the commission if you'd like.
Can I get 5 more minutes?
Is,
Motion for 5 additional minutes.
okay, motion, okay, all those in favor? Okay, go ahead and continue.
Okay, thanks. I'm almost done. And then also, I know that Republic Services doesn't want to receive hazardous items or all of those lists of items in their trash. There's no way to really police that, and it does end up in the trash. Just like, we were told that old tires wouldn't be accepted, but at their transfer station, there's an old tire lane in the pit. And another really big concern is how it would negatively impact FIA, the Fairfax businesses, and the UG efforts to improve our district. We've been working really hard for the last several years to change the image of our district. Having a solid waste transfer station would be a big setback to recent efforts by FIA, Fairfax businesses, and the unified government to improve the district. The Fairfax Master Plan, which is part of the Northeast Master Plan, was approved and adopted by the unified government commissioners for this purpose. This plan was created to address the long-term problems in the Fairfax district and promote its future viability. Part of these problems are the perception and the reality of the district being run down, dirty, and unsafe. We also believe it will reduce property values, restrict development opportunities, and make more difficult to attract employees and new businesses in the district. And so we ask that you vote to not approve this application.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions for Ms. Clark before she sits down? Okay, seeing none. Sir, would you like to speak?
Good evening. My name is Steve Daly, and I'm the general manager of the Fairfax Drainage District.
What's your address, sir?
1620 Fairfax Traffic Way, KCK.
Thank you.
So I don't have a whole lot to add to Melissa's presentation, but being in the drainage district business, one of our main jobs, in addition to keeping the river at bay when it gets high in elevation, is to take care of the drainage interior to the district. And so we have like 11 miles of storm sewers. We're not really in the sanitary or combined sewer business. We have storm sewers, so we handle storm water, supposed to. But in an agreement years ago, we allowed the unified government to use our sewers at certain locations to transmit the waste that they regulate. That waste is not easy on sewers. It causes premature deterioration, corrosion, breakdown of the concrete if they're concrete sewers. So what concerns Fairfax Drainage about this additional discharge would be two things. Number one is the odor that's been mentioned. I have direct experience with the Liquid Environmental Solutions company, because whenever there was a complaint of odor, they always call them Fairfax Drainage because it's coming out of our sewers, but we really don't regulate what's in the sewers. It's the city that does. So I would have to contact Scott Craig. He's the environmental compliance officer with the UG, and Roland Sachs, who's an officer with the Division of Air Quality with the city, and get those folks time after time after time to try to correct the problems with Liquid Environmental Solutions. I can tell you in a 12-month period, we had 13 complaints from different businesses, and like Melissa said, many of them had to go home with headaches, with nausea, things that Fairfax Drainage really can't help with, but we try to serve as a liaison between the source and the people at the UG that could do something about it. So we're sensitive to this particular application because we really don't want to add to an odor problem that we already have, nor do we want to add to a sewer maintenance problem more than we already have with existing discharge. We're already spending several $100,000 a year to clean and maintain and repair the sewers, and more chemicals coming into the sewer lines are going to cause additional expense. So I thank you for your time, and I'd be glad to entertain any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Clark and Ms. Council, do you want to come back up and address some of the concerns from the neighbors?
Sure, I'll have, I've made notes and to answer a couple questions. Just to clarify, I don't know about the trash trucks. We are actually moving 40 of the 60 that are operational right now.
Go ahead.
There you are. Oh, I'm sorry. We're removing 40 of the 60 to a different site, so it is only going to be 20 trash trucks that are going to operate out of this new facility. So it's not just the employee vehicles that will be gone from there. You know, those 40 employees, it'll also be 40 actual trash trucks that we're going to be.
So 40 trash trucks and 40 employee vehicles?
Yes.
Okay, so there'll be 20 trucks coming and going at
from
different
there.
times during the day?
Yes, as well as the transfer trailers that will be picking up the waste same day to take to our landfill, yes.
Okay.
The other items that I just wanted to address is that the trash along the streets, we will be hiring laborers for that to ensure, and we are fenced in. And part of our $5 million proposal is to actually repair the entire fencing along all sides as well. So while the trash will stay in the building, we will still be having additional laborers to keep the trash around the area in case that does become an issue with wind or something like that. The only other odors, we did address that in our housekeeping plan, but we've also committed to having a separate line if there is any issues in the area. Currently, in the transfer station that we purchased 2 years ago, after we cleaned it up in off Winchester, we haven't had a single odor complaint through that once we purchased it and had it cleaned up from the prior owners. The only other part I wanted to say is that as far as improving the district goes, we are planning, this is a multi-million-dollar project that we are planning to do to increase the capacity for ourselves, but also to help the look of the area there too. And we'll be redoing the entire parking structure and that whole entire structure back in the back. As you can see in that corner, all those containers, we're moving to a separate location. So we'll essentially have the office building in the shop and then that transfer station on site. So it'll actually clean it up quite a bit for out there and make it look pretty nice. And that was all, unless anyone has any questions for me.
Yeah, go ahead, Commissioner Connolly.
Yeah, I mean, it was mentioned that it was open to the public, so how much are you expecting from the public?
So we want to open it to the public so that there is somewhere. I know we, as we heard when we came a little early, is there's some dumping going on and that sort of thing. This will give an avenue right there in that area. So if we are having issues, that we can have it open to the public to have a place to bring their waste. That's not so far away. We put it at a max of 1,000 tons a day. So we would cap it. I mean, we wouldn't be able to go over that amount because that's what the permit would be for. We don't really have an idea of how much that would be. I would say at our other transfer station, about 75% of the volume that we bring in at that one, which is about 1,000 tons a day, is ourselves. The other 25% is outside folks.
So the people that's coming from the public, is there some type of requirement, a tarp, or what it have to be over it, or is there some kind of regulations for them to transport it?
If they come in like a pickup and trailer, yes, we require their loads to be tarped as well.
Okay. Now, would that odor go through the community as they was bringing it to the site, if they don't properly have it contained?
I mean, I guess it could.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Do you, I mean, if they come in and it's not properly contained, do you refuse to accept?
We do. There's lots of loads that we'll refuse to take, or if they have any like paint or hazardous material, any liquid, we only take like construction and demolition type and commercial waste or residential waste. So no special, no hazardous, no anything of that sort.
So can you address the concerns about the nitrogen and all these ones I can't pronounce, phenolics, benzene, ethyl benzene, and toluene discharge, or any types of, yes?
Yeah, so what leachate is liquids that come through trash. So at transfer stations, when you manage solid waste, there are liquids in your residential waste. And so anything that comes out during it is considered leachate. In addition to leachate, we commit to washing down the floors, which generates wastewater associated with that. Typically, what we do at transfer stations, besides washing it down, is that we typically have some sort of filtration system, as well as an oil and water separator before discharging it. There are other options for treatment. I think the concern was so the data provided was at 2 transfer stations in Missouri, because that was the one facilities that require routine sampling. And a lot of transfer stations don't. It's just for the initial discharge. So this was a facility that we had consistent data. And in that facility, there were, there was elevated metals, BTEX or benzene, toluene, ethyl benzene, and xylene are typical of what you do see in leachate. It's typically at low levels that usually are not a concern. We've talked to Scott Craig. Cobb Point does take leachate from 3 landfills of Republics. And, we have gone through that permitting process. He's familiar with what leachate is. And my understanding, talking to Scott Craig, is he did not have an issue with this.
What about rodents, birds, and insects at your facilities?
At our transfer stations, we typically don't see that as much as you would at a landfill per se, because we literally remove the waste as soon as it's dumped on the floor. So we will be running our operation where as the waste is being dumped, right next to it will be a trailer being loaded. So we don't have that opportunity. It will not sit. Right now, I have a company that does it at the other transfer station. I get a picture every single night around 5, 6 o'clock, and it's completely cleared, and we've been able to wash it out. We haven't gotten any really rodents or issues there, but we do have vector control plans for those kind of things, and we will, take those into, if we get a complaint, we'll be taking care of it immediately with our pest plan, so.
Commissioner Jones?
My question is this. Well, first a comment. Sometimes the best predictor of future performance is past performance. And what I'm getting from the report that the Fairfax Group submitted is that they're saying that when the same company was there in the 70s and 80s, they had a bad experience. So my question is this. What would be different now? What would make them think that it'd be any different because they had a bad experience then? And so are some of the same people involved in the project? I know that was a long time ago, but just like they mentioned that there's somebody in their group that recalls this and had a family business there, which I'm sure is important to them.
Sure, I can speak to that. The company has probably really just in the last 5 years, definitely in the last 30 plus, come to extremely regulated. I mean, we are, if we have, a city or a state plan, we'll take it probably tenfold and make it even more regulated for ourselves so that we don't have those kind of issues. That was 40, 50 years ago, and there probably wasn't as many regulations in place. I'm not sure during that time with that experience, and I do understand that's probably hard to forget, but I am saying that we're committed to making it, one of the best places to work at and also one of the best places where we, can contribute to the community. We also have our current one that we're operating right now that we think is a good operation that we're keeping clean and removing the trash every day that we've owned for 2 years that we can show here, the same group here. But to answer your question, was any of the current employees that I have here back then when it was running? No, I don't have any of the same employees that were currently there as the management staff when it was running.
Okay. Were you aware of that previous dilemma?
I was aware that it was a special use permit until 2006, but I was not aware that it was, that they had issues with it in the 70s and 80s, no.
Okay, thank you.
So just to highlight on that, the solid waste industry has significantly improved over the last 30 years. Before you would get questionable waste very commonly, your liquid waste, your hazardous waste going to transfer stations. They weren't maintained or regulated in the way they are today. And that also goes on the solid waste side. There's a lot of environmental regulations out there. That what we're proposing is not, it well exceeds what the regulations are, because Republic Services is a national company and has to maintain a certain standard.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Huey?
I was going to actually ask about the regulatory bodies and who oversees that. How often are you inspected on an annual basis?
So as we move forward with this process, the next step will be to obtain a permit from the Kansas Department of Health and Environment. And that permit process is about 6 months. It can be a little bit longer. And after that, it depends on funding. They're usually visited or inspected about once a quarter.
Commissioner Reasons?
Yeah, I just have a couple things. I understand where everybody's concerned about, because I used to office right next to Liquid Environmental, and I moved out of there because the smell was so bad on a regular basis. Now, granted, that was Liquid, this is not. My other concern, though, is you have Kellogg there, where my kids get their cereal from. You're going to have trash right there. Is that going to be, what are you going to do to make sure that that area and those food areas are not going to be getting in that type of smell and odor from the trash? Because let's be honest, no matter where you are with trash, it's going to smell to some extent. How are you going to help being so close to those food areas that are making foods for our families?
Sure, and I think that's a valid concern. There are many in that area. I honestly don't believe that what we're going to be doing is going to in any way contaminate their facility. You know, we're going to be inside our facility with the trash only. It's not ever going to be outside of our facility, and it'll be cleared, you know, every single night. And so, you know, aside from even like an open top, you know, in their parking lot next door to them, I don't think we're going to be any type of other additional issue for them.
And one other thing, and the only other reasons I'm looking at, I believe Waste Management has a same place right there off K32. Is that, am I not correct that they have a?
I think you might, are you speaking about WCA's where it's
Right off K32 and.
all out the door and?
Yes, everything is trash, and I've lived over there.
Yeah.
And that is disgusting, and so I'm sure there's other issues. I mean, that's a concern too. If I have a business down there, you tell us that you're gonna have someone sitting there, but let's be honest, if someone dumps a big old trash, I mean, how quickly are they gonna get on that to be able to keep it clean for everybody else around them?
You will not see that from ours. We have our own, we've called in and spent millions of dollars at the current one that we've purchased so that we don't ever have that kind of problem. And like I said, we've been clearing it every single night, which is what we plan to maintain if this one is approved.
And on that note, Waste Connections actually got a significant notice of violation due to waste outside. That's inappropriate and should never occur at any facility. If you talk to regulators in Kansas or Missouri, they would be happy to say that, Republic's transfer stations aren't operated like that, so.
Open to the public thing to me. So when you say open to the public, does these people have a knowledge of how they should transport this waste? Do they have a basic knowledge, or?
So I would say that at our current facility, yes, they do have a knowledge. When we open it, we'll be putting out that information. And that mainly the open to the public is really for those people that maybe they run like a, I don't know, like a little roofing business, or maybe they clean out old homes, or that's the kind of stuff that we're getting. And it's usually about the same kind of customers. So we put out notices of how they should be transporting the material, yes.
Other questions?
In regards to the same question as Commissioner Conley, is that restricted to Wyandotte County residents, or is that open to the general public in on the Missouri side as well?
So we have not decided on how to handle that, and we would be kind of open. We said about a 10-mile radius. We'd like to keep it, for the Wyandotte County residents in, the Fairfax area, but we have not 100% decided on that part yet.
Okay. Mr. Richardson, you have a question?
So related to your wastewater that comes out in the leachate, so you will have an oil water separator, and you said another type of pretreatment. Is that guaranteed you're going to have that, or do you work with water pollution control and they tell you based on the capacity of our system what you can and can't do? How does that work?
Typically, that's a standard requirement that Republic has to put an oil water separator in there. Filtration is really just to keep the trash from getting into the grates, it's getting into the sewer piping, so you don't have clogging.
Okay, so you'll have a separator so there's no trash that gets into the system, and then an oil water separator, and then the only other reason you would do any kind of pretreatment is if water pollution control said, hey, you've got too much of this chemical, you need to get it out.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Other questions?
Yes, I have a question.
Commissioner Jones.
So, how do you advertise for business? When you talk about it being open to the public, how do you advertise and do you qualify what's permissible versus what's not permissible in terms of waste?
So we have a scale house. So the waste gets inspected, as it comes in. So if you're not a current customer and you're new and you come up to our current facility and say, hey, I want to dump, we have to go look and see what you had to make sure it was acceptable and that you had all the proper things. We do have some items that we can hand out for you for your first time, like a vest, hard hat, because we, take safety very seriously. But then after that, we hand out a paper, tell them all the information, but it's kind of word of mouth. We'll put some stuff out there when it does open and let people know, based on what we have decide, like how we want to work that, if we want to do Wyandotte or just the Fairfax district or how that's going to work. But that's how we, did it now. We just sort of said when we opened, and then as we get new customers, we explain the rules and that sort of thing to them.
And so in follow-up to that question, what percentage of your business would you say is existing versus new customers that know the rules and the ropes?
New, I would say we only have about 5. At the current one that we have right now,
Yes.
probably only about 5-10%, maybe, not
That are
even
new?
that. Mhm.
Okay. And then my other question is, because in our report, I see multiple pictures when we were talking about your operations that have trash receptacles outside. So my question is, what percent of your operation actually happens indoors where you might be able to better contain odors versus outdoors?
For the transfer station, any of the dumping on the ground when the customers come in, that is 100% contained inside. What you're seeing in some of the pictures is our convenience center that we just installed. That's for if someone just comes in, maybe they miss trash day and they have a couple bags, they put those into those open tops. It keeps the citizens from outside of that area where maybe larger trucks are dumping and has them to where they have a place to take them. We got a lot of Christmas trees, that kind of thing during the holidays.
So you get residential and commercial business?
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Other questions?
I have one.
Yes.
I know you contacted them, but was there any feedback from your neighbors to the southwest, the Homes Incorporated and the Quindaro Homes?
No.
They would seem to be one of your closest
Mhm.
neighbors and most susceptible to the problems that these folks are speaking about.
So we were notified by Wyandotte to follow up with them because of the close proximity and since it is residential. And so we contacted them the day that they notified us related to the public hearing and had left multiple messages afterwards. We were surprised that they never reached back to us, so.
And we really didn't have, we didn't have too many people at our neighborhood meeting either, which is why we personally reached out to the Fairfax district and let them know what, we were doing so that they could have a chance to. I think what happens in that area is a lot of the companies, just similar to us, is maybe their headquarters or somewhere else. So when we sent out, we sent out, we just didn't get a lot of response at our neighborhood meeting. I think 2 people.
Commissioner Serta?
So I have 2 questions. I want to go back to something that the director mentioned in terms of pretreatment. How does that work? Is that a process or is that technology? Is that equipment that needs to be installed in place? Because the way I understood your answer, you were saying if you were notified that there were issues in the waste stream as identified by Water Pollution Control, you could deal with pretreatment, but could you do it proactively so that there's not an issue?
Absolutely. Yeah, there's quite a few options. Typically, although we think of the liquids that come out of trash as pretty bad, related to industrial, they're relatively low. And so we typically don't have to do pretreatment, excluding the removal of
Oil.
debris and then the oil. But there are some facilities that have pretreatment, depending on the location, so.
But again, is that equipment or is that a process? Is that like, adding some sort of, detergent or some sort of
Sometimes,
cleaner?
you typically.
Febreze.
Yeah, it's Febreze. Yeah, we do have that as an option. There's odor systems out there, but sometimes there'll be a tank, an aeration system to, I think Ms. Clark mentioned BOD or biological oxygen demand, nitrogen. So by mixing it, a lot of the VOCs and so forth will reduce in concentration before discharging.
It just seems to me, I mean, I'm not in the waste business. I don't know much about the waste business. Obviously, like every household, I generate waste. But, you know, it would seem to me that there are predictable things in the waste stream that are going to be difficult to sort out, screen out, keep out, that you're going to have to deal with. The other thing I was surprised by is in the report from, in the odor management plan, again, odor mitigation seems to be described, you know, as, there's a section on waste acceptance in there, it's on page 8. And it talks about, you know, if an odor is identified and the source is identified and that source is deemed to be objectionable, it would seem to me there are things you could know in advance that are going to be objectionable, that are going to create odors that you just wouldn't accept as a matter of course, as opposed to, again, letting the problem fester, so to speak, and then going back and trying to figure out what it was. Again, if some of that is difficult to mitigate and it's not easy to prevent, then it would seem it's more endemic to the nature of the business and you're going to have to deal with it one way or another in any case. But I'm not seeing a lot of language in this report that suggests anything other than remediation after the problem already exists. And again, I don't understand why there's not more of a proactive stance on, you know, we're just not going to take X, Y, and Z. If we have, you know, problems with whether it's commercial customers or others that are, you know, known to be creating this problem, we're not going to take waste from them anymore. Again, we see management plans on all sorts of issues where, you know, you're taking a more proactive stance. You identify things that you know are probably going to be problems and just say, we're just not going to deal with that.
Yeah, that is correct. And that was the intent on not taking special waste, specifically sludges. They have very strong odor, and a lot of food waste as well has a strong odor. So, and that's typically what we do is not take the special waste and that stuff that has to be handled differently to not mitigate odors, but keep the odors from occurring. However, you may get something unique that you didn't realize smelled until after it's accepted, and then they would, you know, change the process based on identifying odor and then going back to that waste sort.
Yes, I guess to add to that is the list of the items that we don't accept, all of that is either, you know, hazardous or it is an extremely smelly odor, where we have to accept especially at a different location, not here. So I guess that's why we don't have that in our odor plan, because we're already not accepting that material.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Commissioner Jones?
I'm glad you said that because I have a follow-up question to that then. So what assurance would we have if this were approved that the things that you don't accept today would not be accepted tomorrow? Is that a regulatory decision or is that I'm a business and I get to decide kind of what I want to do with it?
I can answer, that's stipulated. They've said that they won't, that's part of the stipulations. So that's part of the rules of the special use permit.
And to follow up with that, the intent is to take that housekeeping plan and incorporate it into the operation plans with KDHE, so it would also have the state backing on the regulatory side.
Okay. Is that it? Okay, we will close the public portion of the meeting and, yes, go ahead and come on up.
My name is Elnora Jefferson. I live at 419 Haskell in Kansas City, Kansas. And thank you very much for allowing me to speak. I wasn't quite sure that what I had to say that was relevant. Mr. Zimmerman, I imagine, okay, has been very helpful because I live in this neighborhood and also represent some of the neighborhood groups like the homes, Oak Grove, in this area that surrounds the 7th Street traffic way, and been very instrumental in the master plan. Mr. Zimmerman has been very helpful because he's helped me narrate some of the information so that we can actually provide it to the neighborhoods. This is what I'd like to say here on this. Number one is, if this body approves this particular special permit, I would ask that a diagram be drawn by Republic so that people are able to visually see and understand the difference in what is going on with the transfer station and solid waste. And sometimes some of these technical terms is kind of difficult for people to get wrapped around that, in addition to everything that they do. The second thing is that I live in a neighborhood that is beyond the 200 feet, but it is very susceptible to dumping. dumping from a lot of different areas, from people in Wyandotte County, outside of Wyandotte County. We're having just a terrible time of that. So I appreciate, Commissioner Jones, the questions that you had about the people who are bringing in, Commissioner Conley, people who are bringing in waste are allowed to do that are not perhaps contracted with Republic. And we don't know what that is contained in that waste. So that dumping needs to be looked at and addressed, and what can be done to mitigate that or to keep us from being susceptible to whatever it is that's not accepted here by the company. The third thing it would be, and I quite didn't get the pick for that, is the amount of diesel. These are diesel trucks, I believe, and let me know if I'm mistaken. So there is information and talk about diesel and the contamination of that. And I'd like to hear something addressed about the diesel emissions. Because we're having more traffic, we're coming up and down 7th Street. You know, we do have housing projects, and we're part of the master plan, so that there are revitalization and renovation of homes and so forth in the area. And I'd like to hear something about the diesel and the emissions and the projected amount of that. So, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Could I get the two of you back up just to make a comment on, if you can, on diesel emissions, or again, maybe it goes back to traffic as to the number of visits in and out?
I cannot make an exact amount. We haven't looked at that study, but I will say we are removing, I mean, currently we're running the operation with 60-plus trucks that are diesel, actually, in that location. And we'll be actually only running 20 of our trucks out of there in the transfer trailers, which will be about 10. So the actual diesel emission amount of trucks will go down.
Okay, so it's not those 20 trucks coming back 3 or 4 times a day.
Currently, right now, they come through the facility a couple times a day. And they'll still be coming to the facility a couple times a day. We'll just be reducing the amount of trucks.
Okay, but
So I don't think I mean, I can get like an actual study done on the diesel emissions, but it would not be more than what it currently is operating.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, we're going to go ahead and close the public portion of the meeting, and we'll go to the staff, and Rob, let's talk some trash.
That was
I was
great.
just waiting all night to say that, so there you go.
So, my first reaction to this was, you got to be crazy. Because I'm familiar with the transfer station they've talked about over on Winchester. I am related to an adjacent property owner, and the other facility was bad. I mean, they had to get cats to take care of the rats that were there with the previous owner. They've got to feed the cats now. They didn't have to used to feed the cats. So, and they haven't seen rats for probably, after about the first 6 months they were there, when they got it cleaned up and got them cleaned out, there haven't been rats. And thus the snake population went down too, the odor went down. And, when you walk around there, it's a trash facility, but it isn't something, I felt like, Byron and I went over there and walked around with the ladies that are here this evening and some of the other representatives, probably in advance of what the Fairfax folks did. On hot days, occasionally, on the adjacent property, and it's closer than what you see on the map here. It is much closer. On a warm, hot summer day, you might occasionally say, oh, I think that's a trash smell. It used to be, under the old system, you couldn't go outside. It was really bad. So, Republic has cleaned it up. They didn't do that because the city made them do it. They didn't do that because the neighbors were on them. They gave the neighbors their numbers and wanted to talk to them if there was a problem. They have inspectors that come in, and if they smell things out of the ordinary, the local staff gets penalized for that, which, I found those things reassuring, given what we're talking about, given that we have, I remember seeing the rats and seeing the cats catch them, and, I thought, we've got food facilities next to this isn't going to work. And my first reaction was crazy, and the applicants would attest to some of my line of questioning about what's going on here, and are you insane, as to what was going on there. So my thoughts on this changed quite a bit because, the adjacent neighbor, you know, would you want a transfer facility station next to you? Probably not. It's not as bad as we thought it, you know, it's not as bad as the other one, and it's not as bad as I thought a good one would be, you know, so, and at the end of the day, it's better than other things that could be there, quite frankly. So, you know, that's kind of what I've heard directly over dinner with the adjacent neighbor about what their experience is there, and which is, you know, kind of a credit to Republic because it was bad before. I mean, they had so much, they would leave trash in there like the one out west, and it burned the facility twice. I mean, because they had so much trash in there, it heat combusted and, you know, burned it down, which endangered the other properties. You know, they never have trash on site out after that. I also want to talk a little bit about the private loads. And, you know, I see that when I go over there to visit. And it's generally a contractor with a pickup truck full of stuff, and they're, you know, their facility over there, that part of the operation is outside, and they just push stuff into a container. They don't actually go in the transfer floor like they would here, but it was out in the open, and even if they do it inside, there's people there watching what they're doing, so you're not going to sneak something in on them. I mean, they have an interest not to get caught because, you know, people might be regulators checking them out or whatever. So it would be hard to, you might get a can of paint in, you know, but you're not going to take barrels of stuff in, and, you know, it would be hard to sneak something bad in. The trash, yeah, there is trash, but in that case, they're adjacent to an interstate, and, you know, the trash isn't any different from the interstate around their property than it is on down the road just from the interstate. And they have illegal dumping around there too, because the road is kind of secluded that goes on down the street from there. So, you know, there is some illegal dumping, you know, and the reason I talk about those two things together is that we have a task force at the UG this year working just on illegal dumping because it's so bad. I mentioned that in the previous hearing. I don't know if this is going to help it, because quite frankly, if you put something on the curb, it disappears. I mean, we can put tires out, a limited number. I mean, you can put, I've never had anything. I had one item when it was too heavy for them. It exceeded their weight limit that they left. I divided it into 2 bags and they took it the next week. But I mean, if you put your stuff out here in Wyandotte County, it goes away. They charge by weight. They don't charge by the load, so it would actually be cheaper here than the Deffenbaugh option, than going out to Deffenbaugh where they charge you by the load. And so there are some options here that I think might help generally the community in the illegal dumping process. The issue with what goes into the water system is pretty highly regulated, and I think that if you were to approve this, we could craft a stipulation to say, work with Mr. Daly, work with Water Pollution Control to make sure that what's going in here isn't going to damage the system and isn't going to create any additional smells where it's going. I mean, I think we can do that. I mean, and I don't know why we wouldn't necessarily do that, because, you know, quite frankly, in a combined sewer system, I mean, I don't know if you've ever walked by a combined sewer in the summer, but they stink because there's human waste in those, and there's more human waste than actual stormwater, you know, and so over the summer they start to stink because they don't get washed out. You know, winter that's cold, but you know, the springtime it gets washed out, but in the summer when it's been dry, it's just human waste in there, so they stink. I mean, they're nasty. We don't want to make that any worse, and we certainly don't want stuff going through the air. But my observations of their existing facility is that driving down the street, you're not going to smell it here. I mean, if you're on the road going into Manapro on the wrong day, wind in the wrong direction, you might smell something that you think is, oh, that might be the transfer station. And I don't think you're going to, I mean, that's because this building is Manapro. They do pet food, and this empty lot is owned by Sunshine, and then they've got the factory to the north of there. So that's just what I kind of have experienced driving by this thing, probably on average more than once a week. in their other facility. I've never smelled it in my car since they've taken over. And even when I'm out adjacent to that, for an afternoon working on a car or something, it hasn't been anything that I was like, oh, I'm going to move to the other side of the building so I don't have to smell this. I've not even smelled it since they took over. So the other things on the list, quite frankly, when you bring in these empty containers and they've had stuff in them, some of those are going to stink and some of those are going to draw rodents just because of what was in those previously. So I think that is actually an improvement to get rid of those because you don't know what was in those dumpsters beforehand. And some of those, in other places where people keep especially their 1 and 2 yard dumpsters, which I think is like what a lot of these are. Those can be pretty nasty. That's, like what's out in back of a restaurant, and the residue of that's pretty bad until it gets washed out in the rain. And that all goes out onto the ground. If this new system, all of the water that comes out of it will go into a drain. None of that goes outside. Now, the trucks are going to track a little bit of that in and out, but it's not, it didn't look significant in their other operation when we walked through there. One thing to consider is the future of landfills. The landfill we use in Johnson County is going to be full, and sooner than later. And there's not another option. So we will have to transfer our trash, and it will get hauled elsewhere at some point in the future. And we will need more transfer stations when collectively all of KCK trash, all of Wyandotte County trash. I don't know what Bonner and Edwardsville, Lake Quivira do for their trash, but we have one contract for KCK, and when that landfill fills up, there's not an option that's close. I don't know how much capacity Courtney Ridge has, but it's probably not 20 years. That's the other big landfill in the metro area, and so these things are going to be a necessity of life, not a convenience for the operators in the not too distant future. They can provide us a better diagram that we can blow up and provide to folks before the Board of Commissioners meeting. I know this is a tough one, and if I was a next door neighbor, if I had my ruthers, I probably wouldn't want it there. But when you look at what it serves for the broader community and the fact that in their currently operating facility, they have a pretty good track record, and that they're going to spend more than $5 million on a 2-year permit, I think they're going to follow the rules. If they don't, at any time in that 2 years, if the Board of Commissioners were to approve it, they could bring it up and revoke it. And so they're going to be spending a lot of money, and I would imagine the general manager is personally responsible for that to her supervisors. That's a lot to pay attention to when you're spending that much money, and you got to follow the rules. I think they have a good track record. I think they have a huge incentive to follow the rules, given the temporary nature of this permit. So in addition to the current stipulations, I would like to add that they get us a new diagram as soon as possible that has better illustration for a typical community member to see how this would operate, and that they would work with both our water pollution control and Fairfax Drainage District to assure that the leachate isn't going to harm the system or create an additional smell that's not already there. One last thing on the truck counts. I think that they've covered that the number of trucks is going to go down, the diesel emissions are going to go down, but it is also, it's a state highway, it's built for that traffic, but I think in general the truck count overall, as you saw in the diagram, won't impact the state highway network or local traffic. There'll be more trucks in and out, and they did note that they're all going to be directed to come from the north. So that means they won't come through downtown. They will come through K5 or from the Missouri River Bridge to get there, so they won't go through they won't be hauling these extra trucks to the community. Now, if you or I wanted to go dump a load there, we drive from wherever, but the trash trucks that are coming in and out would be directed through the industrial road network, which I think is important. still, I understand this is a very difficult issue, and, you know, if it was you and I and it was next to us, we would probably not want it if we had our choice. But I also don't think it's as bad as it's been portrayed to be. So we'd recommend approval with those additional stipulations. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions for staff? Commissioner Serta?
Does that include replacement of the fence? Which they mentioned.
Sorry. Yes, that's part of their plan.
Other questions? Commissioner Jones?
So, Rob, I don't know if you know the answer to the question. I didn't ask this earlier of Ms. Clark, but I thought I understood the Fairfax group to say that they had been working with the city as well with regard to beautification, betterment of the Fairfax area. And I think I heard her say that they didn't find out until about December, and our report says that the neighborhood meeting was back in September. So my question is this: what kind of communication, because just like you've done a good presentation on, you've kind of changed your viewpoint, and so I'm trying to figure out what kind of communication among everybody has taken
All right.
place.
So when they talked to me, they asked who they needed to reach out to because they didn't have anybody at their meeting. So I gave them Melissa's contact and got them in contact with them, and they invited them over to their facility. So I assume that they've had, I mean, I know they've had direct conversations with both Melissas, one on each side of the argument here. And as you can see, Fairfax is well represented here this evening. They've been to the site. They still have concerns. So I think there's been a dialogue there, and, you know, they'll have an opportunity if they wish for those adjacent property owners to file a protest petition after tonight's meeting before, you know, in the next 7 to 10 days, if they want to do that. That would increase the voting requirement at the Board of Commissioners for approval. Did that answer your question?
Other questions for staff? Seeing none, I'll stand for a motion.
I move the Kansas City Planning Commission recommend approval of petition SP 2019-102, subject to all staff stipulations.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Ernst, seconded by Commissioner Connolly. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Cho?
Aye.
Conley?
Aye.
Ernst?
Aye.
Yui?
Aye.
Jones?
Aye.
Reasons?
Aye.
Serta?
No.
I'm sorry?
No.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to recommend approval of this special use permit, subject to the staff's revised comments and suggestions, passes 6 in favor and 1 opposed.
Thank you. This will be heard once again on February 27th at 7 p.m. in this room. Thank you all for your attendance.
Our next application is special use permit SP 2019-103, Evan Dolby. Special use permit for a tire distribution center at 3140 South 28th Street. Please include the following items as part of the record for this case: the city's currently adopted zoning and subdivision regulations, the official zoning map for the area in question, the city's currently adopted master plan for the area in question, the staff report and attachments dated February 10, 2020, the application and other documents, plans, pictures, and maps submitted by the applicant in furtherance of the case and contained in the official file, the notice in the Wyandotte Echo dated October 17, 2019, and the notices to property owners dated October 17, November 7, and December 3, 2019, and January 28, 2020. Does any member of the commission have any contact to disclose with regard to this application?
No.
Mr. Chairman, I would remind the commission that we held this application over from last month's meeting as the applicant was not present. All those for and against, please come to the front of the room.
Is Mr. Dolby in the room? So this is the second meeting that he's missed, correct?
All right. If he's not here, we need to move it to the end of the agenda.
Okay.
Our next application is special use permit SP, I'm getting there, hold on. SP 2020-13, Brian Glasser. Special use permit for a short-term rental Airbnb at 508 Ohio Avenue. Please include the following items as part of the record for this case: the city's currently adopted zoning and subdivision regulations, the official zoning map for the area in question, the city's currently adopted master plan for the area in question, the staff report and attachments dated February 10, 2020, the application and other documents, plans, pictures, and maps submitted by the applicant in furtherance of the case and contained in the official file, the notice in the Wyandotte Echo dated January 16, 2020, and the notices to property owners dated January 15, 2020. At this time, does any member of the commission have any contact to disclose with regard to this case?
No.
All those for and against, please come to the front of the room.
Good evening.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the commission and fellow citizens of Wyandotte. My name is Brian Glasser. I live at 2734 Bellevue Avenue in Kansas City, Missouri. Can I just...
Yeah, go ahead and tell us about your project.
So my name is Brian Glasser. I'm here on behalf of a good friend of mine and client, Thomas Vanderbrand. He is the owner of the property. With respect to this application, I would be the local point of contact as I run a local real estate team, a veteran-owned business, and I would be the one managing this. And as the point of contact, I've already had a few neighbors when we sent out the notices who reached out to me who couldn't make the neighborhood meeting, and I've talked with them and addressed it with them. So that's my lead into why we're here for a special use permit, which I applied for on his behalf. He's a very close friend of mine who lives in Dallas, Texas, and he services the central corridor for Bank of America with regards to their Midwest region. He oversees commercial financing and underwriting for healthcare, nonprofit, and higher education funding through Kansas City and Dallas and some other Midwest cities. And as you know, we have a very large healthcare nonprofit sector out here. What prompted us to make this move was that Tom has been told for his long-term leadership growth. He's a VP over there, but KC is a short-list destination as a Midwest city that he could end up in, and that he's always enjoyed visiting me out here. He's been out here several times, most notably, with regards to some Super Bowl celebrations. I didn't want to apply for I believe it's 270 days or more permit, because that would be an assumption that he would be out here for more of that time. But as it stands, we currently expect him to be here for about 3 to 6 weeks at this time per year, treating it more as a vacation rental than anything. This is a small 2-bed, 1-bath home, which was vacant, which we'd like to have it geared towards either, travel nurses, which I do with some of my other rentals. And we get quite a bit of temporary demand for that between some of the people who are rotating in through the city. Obviously, that's just an initial idea, and we're not exclusively looking for that. It could be students, travelers, people passing by, but we look for more so longer-term, shorter-term leases, but that still falls within the short-term rental restrictions. An ideal scenario would be one where we have the place rented to some longer-term leases for about 6 to 8 months, and then shorter-term leases for about 2 to 3 months. The current concerns noted in the staff review were attributed mostly to parking and obviously operating this professionally. Operationally, I am listed as a superhost if I was just referencing Airbnb, but also VRBO amongst various websites, and have enough references and reviews that hopefully will prove that I can run a professional operation, which was one of the main concerns from the neighbor at 518 Ohio Avenue, who just wanted to make sure. He wrote me an email at like 9 o'clock that night, and I said, hopefully responding to you at this time would show you that, we put a high deal of demand or a high deal of concern on maintaining communication with the neighbors, because that's pretty much the name of the game when it comes to having good relationships with your neighbors, as we've kind of seen. With regards to, we did host a neighborhood meeting. We did not have any attendees or objections to note. We did field questions from neighbors outside of the meeting, specifically from Mr. Sudecum, who is the owner 2 doors down that I referenced. I've also met with the tenants directly adjacent at 510 Ohio Avenue, introduced myself, explained, the sign in the yard. And then the Wolves at 522 Ohio Ave in the West Falls, I've actually met him and been in his home because he cleans up quite a bit around. It's right next to the highway. So there's kind of like this no man's land that he kind of cleans up, and I think he's enthusiastic that somebody else might be able to help him. But with regards to parking, because that's going to be one of the main concerns to discuss here, I was told by the staff that applying for the special use permit requires the parking stipulation. The main reason we wanted to keep the parking in the front was there's actually, I've never come across this before, but there's a handicap ramp, automatic ramp that goes up. And that would have been a very ideal scenario considering we don't see that many rental opportunities that are handicap accessible. Talking with the folks here in the unified government, we know that one of the stipulations that could fall out of this is potentially having to pave parking around the back. There is ample parking back there. I've already ordered, just in the event that would have to occur, I've already ordered a survey on behalf of the owner to ensure that we understand our property boundaries, and that we would get an easement from the neighbor to be able to pave that. That's an estimated change order of about $7,000 to $10,000 in work when you consider some of the arborist work as well as laying proper asphalt or cement for that. Long story short, I know we've been here a long time, so I would just say that I plan to host a updated yet well-preserved, solid, safe property for residents of Kansas City, Kansas, travelers, and also my friend and owner of the property, Tom. This is my first venture in KCK. I look forward to more.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the petitioner?
Do you have one?
Commissioner Reason.
If you are able to put parking in the back, I'm looking at how are you even able to do that?
Yeah, I went by, and I can send these photos to the team over here once I'm done. I went by there earlier today to take some photos in some good light, plus there wasn't anything on the ground. There is you can see it, there's actually a driveway back there that, I wish I had a laser pointer, but yeah, right there, there's actually a garage on the other side of that I'm not sure if the owner directly adjacent to the west owns that, but there is already a garage back there that you would pull in and pull into that. So the plan would be to pave directly across back there, exactly.
But if it looks like that's owned, do you own both those houses then, or?
No, and so that's why I was saying that we would have to, that's why I'm ordering the survey to understand exactly where the boundaries are, and then I would work with the owner next door to get an official easement, because the only other option is, you can see where that truck is parked, where it kind of dips in. That's what I had originally planned for the parking, because that's where the handicap railing, the automatic chair that goes up. But I understand that that's considered the city's land, so I can't include that in the plan as far as official parking. But, I mean, you've been on Strawberry Hill, everybody parks on the street. I just understand that I have to have an official parking plan if that is the case, if you mandate that.
Other questions? So that road dead ends at in front of the house, and then that area right there?
Yes, sir, and it fits about, I drive a Nissan Frontier, it fits about 3.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Open up the public portion of the meeting. Is there anyone who wants to speak in favor of or in opposition to the request? Seeing none, we'll close the public portion of the meeting. We'll get staff comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. While the report recommends denial, I think that there are probably a couple of alternatives here. He could either work out something to get a parking pad back here, or I think he could, from this property line across, he could apply for vacation of that and make that part of his lot, and then it could be it'd be like a front yard parking place, and that makes sense for him to do anyway. So I think that I'd recommend approval subject to the applicant providing either a parking pad in the rear or vacating the right-of-way within 6 months of approval.
Questions for staff?
And this is a one-year approval because he doesn't live there.
Okay, seeing no questions for staff, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion approved, subject to additional staff stipulations.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Serta, seconded by Commissioner Reasons. Discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Cho?
Aye.
Conley?
Aye.
Ernst?
Aye.
Yui?
Aye.
Jones?
Aye.
Reasons?
Aye.
Serta.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to recommend approval for 1 year, subject to the staff stipulations, passes. 7 in favor and none opposed.
Thank you. This will be heard again, once again, February 27th, 7 PM in this room.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, our last item on the agenda tonight, or our last petition, is special use permit application SP 2020-14, Craig N. Seaton. Special use permit for automotive repair and sales at 1202 Kansas Avenue. Please include the following items as part of the record for this case. The city's currently adopted zoning and subdivision regulations, the official zoning map for the area in question, the city's currently adopted master plan for the area in question, the staff report and attachments dated February 10, 2020, the application and other documents, plans, pictures, and maps submitted by the applicant in furtherance of the case and contained in the official file, the notice in the Wyandotte Echo dated January 16, 2020, and the notices to property owners dated January 15, 2020. Does any member of the commission have any contact to disclose with regard to this case?
No.
Mr. Chairman and the Planning Commission, I do have a change in the staff report under Public Works. Those comments were revised on Friday after the packet went out, and they have no comments. All those for and against, please come to the front of the room.
Good evening. Go ahead and give us your name and address and tell us about your project, please.
Craig Seaton, 1202 Kansas Avenue, Kansas City, Kansas, 66105. I'm applying for a special use permit to get a dealer's license so I can mainly dispose of abandoned vehicles that I get left with that aren't worth fixing, that I have money invested in tows or repairs that people won't come get. And I sell a few cars. I have been down there for 27 years. Buy cars from customers that can't afford to fix them or don't want to. I resell them 5 or 10 a year. That's all.
Any questions for the petitioner? Seeing none, we'll open up the public portion of the meeting. Is there anyone that wants to speak in favor of or in opposition to the request? Seeing none, we'll get staff comment.
We'd recommend approval, subject to the stipulations of the staff report.
Questions for staff?
I have a question.
Dr. Serta.
Rob, there's a statement on page 4 in response to question 4. It says the waste oil is burned. Is that permitted?
There are oil burning furnaces. It's quite common for auto shops to do that.
Okay.
I might be familiar with one, like I talked about earlier, that they basically you run it through an oil filter and it burns it, and they're just as efficient as a gas. They just burn waste oil, and that way you don't have to,
So no issues with odor or emissions on that?
you don't smell it, no.
I don't recall ever seeing that on one of these. Thanks.
Other questions? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Jones. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Cho. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Cho?
Aye.
Conley?
Aye.
Ernst?
Aye.
Yui?
Aye.
Jones?
Aye.
Reasons? Serta.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to recommend approval of this special use permit, subject to the staff's comments and suggestions, passes. 7 in favor and none opposed.
Thank you. This will be heard once again on February 27th, 7 PM in this room. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, we have 2 more items. The first one is we need to go back to special use permit application SP 2019-103, Evan Dolby, special use permit for a tire distribution center at 3140 South 28th Street. And we would note that the current special use permit did expire in March of 2019. All those for and against, please come to the front of the room.
Mr. Dolby is still not in the room, and this is the second meeting he's missed. Is that correct? Have we heard anything from him?
So this is a unique property. It's half in Merriam, half in KCK, and given that we were affecting what's going on in another city, I went back to the application, tried to call him, tried to email him. Whoever filled out the application for him, he's in another state. So a local person did that. They got the wrong phone number and the wrong email on the application. So about, I don't know, what, 8 or 10 days ago, I actually got a hold of him, got him the real information, told him what was going on, told the local guy what was going on. And, you know, I kind of expected somebody to be here tonight to ask that it be held over, but
And there's been no public meeting, correct?
there's been no public hearing, so there's one more holdover opportunity at this level, or you could recommend denial. There's not been a neighborhood meeting. It can't just be approved. I mean, it's a clean, I say it's a clean operation. It's all inside. It's kind of just the tire thing is what gets them on this. So, you know,
So if we did a holdover, could it be 30 days? Would that be enough time, or do we need to do 60 days if they were so inclined?
you know, they got to have a want to at some point. So I think 30 days would be sufficient. I mean, we can send another communication and try and call again.
Okay. Questions for staff?
I have a quick question, Rob. So are his approvals in Merriam current?
So that's interesting. We have an interlocal agreement with Merriam that says that we can do the zoning on this property for this case, for this operation.
So these are the only approvals he can have.
Right,
But he's otherwise operating without approval.
right. He is operating without approval.
Yeah.
I told him that. I told the current manager that. I said, if this doesn't get approved, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
So I don't know I don't know what's going on. That usually gets somebody's attention. I thought it did, but
Well, I thought maybe it was because he had approvals there and he figured he didn't need them here, but
yeah, I thought the same thing.
Questions for staff? If not, I'll stand for a motion.
motion to hold over for 30 days to March
9th.
9th.
Motion to hold over to March 9th, made by Commissioner Serta, seconded by Commissioner Reasons. Any discussion? Roll call.
Cho,
Aye.
Conley,
Aye.
Ernst,
Aye.
Yui,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Reasons,
Aye.
Serta.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to hold over this application until the March 9th meeting passes 7 in favor and 1 opposed.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, we have one more item, which is your item.
Yes.
It's the,
I've actually got two items. Need everybody to mark their calendar for an April 27th special meeting at 6 PM. We will be hearing the American Royal application. They won't be ready in time for the April regularly scheduled meeting, and in order to, for some accommodations regarding star bonds and some other things, we're going to need to hear that on April 27th. So if you please mark your calendars and plan to attend a special meeting at 6 PM that evening. Anything you want to add, Rob, to that?
You covered it.
All right. Any questions or comments about that? Okay, and the last item, I want to go over to Patrick. Just want to have a brief discussion about the lake properties that we sent forward last month in response to some inquiries about the way it was handled with the necessity that we had to go back and get my vote. Just wanted Patrick, I think I sent you all an email, but wanted to go to Patrick to discuss how it was handled
Yeah.
and
So, I think the confusion started, we started with 7 people up on the podium, and then Commissioner Jones joined by phone, I think around 9 o'clock or so. So when we went from 7 people to 8, that changed the voting requirement from 4 for passage to 5. So when we held the vote on those 2 plats, it was 4-3 in favor. I think everyone was still thinking 7 people, 4 votes, it passed. As soon as that ended, something kind of, a light bulb went off in my head, and I realized, wait, I think we've got something wrong here. So met with Rob, met with Janet, we confirmed that we are actually 1 vote shy. So under the Planning Commission bylaws, the chair can actually vote anytime they want. Typically, by tradition, they don't vote. The 2 cases where they do vote is if there's a tie or if their vote can change the outcome of a motion. So where we stood at 4-3, there was insufficient, really it was kind of in limbo. It had not passed, it hadn't failed. The chair's vote could change the outcome. If the chair had voted against, it would have been a tie, the motion would have failed. If the chair voted in favor, 5 votes to pass. So in that case, that's why we came back and asked Chairman Carson for the vote to officially get the requirement. I went back and looked, at the full commission, how they handled this, and 6 votes are required at the full commission. The mayor does vote in case of a tie, and the mayor would vote in the case of a 5-4 decision. If they're 1 vote short, and his vote would either cause the motion to fail at a tie or put that 1 vote over the top, the mayor would do the same thing in the full commission. And so while our bylaws don't specifically state how to do that, the full commission typically follows Robert's rules. And I look to the full commission procedures if there's a question about how we handle the situation. And so they would do the same thing that we did. And so it was confusing, and we tried to catch that beforehand, but I thought it was better to do the accurate thing and get the correct vote while we were still in the meeting.
Are there any questions for Patrick on this?
Yeah, I guess the question is, his vote was asked for after we had kind of closed the vote, and there were some other motions made. And you saying that based off our bylaws, that he can vote at any time?
The chairman can actually vote at any time. The 2 times when he needs to vote, though, are in the case of a tie or if the vote can change the outcome.
Once the vote is closed?
So in that case, though, I viewed the vote as essentially pending. It had neither passed nor failed because the chairman's vote was required in that case. And so it really was kind of in just limbo. It hadn't passed, hadn't failed. And so that's why immediately following the next item, we had to go back and finish the vote. So really, at the time when the vote was held, when it was 4-3, we should have then gone to Chairman Carson and said, what's your vote? And so I know it was confusing, and I apologize for the confusion on that, but I felt it was better to do the right thing and get the accurate vote that meeting night.
The other thing
This board doesn't follow the Robert Rules of Order?
That does, yeah. That's very common. And like I said, so the full commission follows the same procedure. If the mayor would vote in the same situation.
Yeah, but I'm saying so you don't have to reopen, because I got a copy of the Robert's Rule of Order right here, if you pass it down to everybody.
I think that's the question that Commissioner
So
Conley had.
well, let me add something that might alleviate some of the confusion. So when the original vote was done, everybody thought it had passed. Mr. Carson's vote didn't change that. And quite frankly, Robert's Rules of Order is a book about this thick. So you've got an abbreviated version of that. And there are multiple versions of Robert's Rules of Order that have different procedures for, you can handle different things in different ways. And so, I think in the end, yeah, we made a mistake because we had miscounted the votes because of the change in the people at the meeting. But it didn't change what anybody perceived as the outcome. And if it had changed what it had perceived as the outcome, then we would have a different circumstance
It
here.
would have been different if we'd have been at the same vote count and then Ms. Jones joined us after, and then we tried to get her vote because she would not have been
here
was
for
not
the-
present.
that would have been
It was not
inappropriate.
necessary.
Right.
Let me ask you another question. So this evening, before you joined the meeting, on the Del Toro case and Board of Zoning Appeals, it was 3 in favor and 4 opposed. And we had to have 5 to pass. Is that 5 to fail?
Now, see, in that case, your vote would not change the outcome. So a no vote, it still fails. An aye vote, it ties and fails. So your vote's not needed.
Gotcha. Anything else? Anybody have any questions? I wanted Patrick
Well,
just.
I just want to make sure, as far as this board, are we going to follow Robert's Rule of Order, or are we going to kind of make up some of our own rules to the votes, or how's that going to work?
I think it's a good question that next time we approve our bylaws, I think we can probably get more specific.
Okay.
And I think that's a good idea, and kind of cover all these bases so that we're not looking to, how does the full commission do it? How do different, like I said, there's different versions of Robert's rules. So I think it'd be a good idea when we next amend our bylaws to get a little bit more specific about how we handle this.
The other thing is that in bodies like this, Janet's been doing this for 500 times. That hasn't happened before. I mean, sometimes you're going to get weird stuff that happens. Now, there might be a time when, and we've had this before, when somebody walked in late and had missed the hearing and it seemed important, so we had a motion to reconsider. You know, and that was after everything was done. This was, you know, I don't know that Robert's Rules of Order addresses when you don't complete the vote accidentally, what do you do? I mean, we all thought we had a completed vote, and the thing that would have really raised the flag is if Mr. Carson had wanted to vote no and said, hey, wait a minute, my vote would have changed that, and we did this wrong. And then I think that's, like I said, that's a different situation, and it would have changed what the public perceived as the outcome of that case when we had the vote. You know, it was, and I suppose if he had voted no, we would have scratched our heads in a different way because the public had kind of left. We were still on TV. Everybody saw what we did. The rest of the people in the hearing saw what we did, and no one, you know, I think it's a good point to raise, but we didn't have anybody from the public saying, hey, you guys did this wrong. And, you know, that would have been, I just think sometimes when you're on the fly, you got to, you know.
Well, the best thing we have at that point is to go to legal counsel for their interpretation, and that's the best.
And that's what we did.
That's what we did.
I guess my point is, I mean, I've been on a lot of boards, and once a motion is closed, you just can't add a vote.
So it's my interpretation that the motion had not closed. That's the thing. So a motion to reconsider is done after a full correct vote has been made, and some new information comes up, and a motion to reconsider has to be made by someone who's on the winning side of the motion. So it was my interpretation that because we did not get Chairman Carson's vote, that the vote had actually not closed. We had moved on to the next case incorrectly, but that the vote was still actually outstanding and needed to come back.
All right, I agree.
Okay, so in the future, to kind of alleviate this, I mean, like I did tonight, when we took attendance, I asked for a count from Janet, how many we needed to pass. That's why I had written on my agenda that we needed 5 to pass anything this evening, and that's why I made when we got to the 3 to 4, do I need to speak? So that's the reason for the question to Janet, was because 5 was stuck in my head. So from now on, when we take attendance, I'll have a number that we need to pass, and then that's what we'll go to.
Janet gets tired after 10:30 at night.
That's right.
FYI.
That's right.
Mr. Chairman, once this is concluded, I would ask that, would you all stay for a picture with staff and the commission that's present tonight for us? That'd be much appreciated.
All right. Is there anything, yeah, I guess, is there anything else that anybody would like to bring up before we adjourn? Okay.
Probably just one thing. First, I'm sorry that my schedule caused that dilemma, but the second part is, because I've done that 2 times, and I know the first time Rob helped me, but the number that I had, just so that you all know, because I was waiting, sent Janet an email, and I figured, well, she's not going to see that really because she's
Here.
busy with that. But that process really needs to be either another number, because some service called me and said, hey, are you trying to get, and I was like, yeah, well, let us help you. Then he called a couple of people and had to call me back, so it was really kind of a discombobulated thing. So if we can improve that part so that somebody could join by phone, we would probably not.
The technology exists, that it shouldn't have been as
Yeah.
cumbersome as it was, so.
It was pretty comfortable. I think it works.
We'll just FaceTime you, there we go, okay.
By the way, we have talked about that with the IT department, who's supposed to be, you know, helping us along with that, and we thought we had the right stuff, and so we're working on that on our side.
Okay, great. All right, with nothing else, we'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting, and we'll take a quick photo. Thank you all.
Would you shoot us with a camera? Would you shoot us with a camera?